What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Monday show, gang. Good start to the week. Happy holidays to all the soul worshippers out there. I know it's a big day with the eclipse going on. Seth already asking in the chat if I saw the eclipse. I kind of saw it get slightly darker outside from basically this seat, looking out that window while working on baseball stuff for the site. So I'm aware that there was an eclipse more than I went out and looked at the sun for it. Saw some cool pictures, some coverage of it though. Always cool, astronomical event. Always a big deal. The movement of celestial bodies around the horizon and everything. It's kind of cool. In some deep dark corners of the internet, they'll tell you that that's only possible because the moon is fake. Which I love. How else could it be the perfect distance to block the sun? A lot of silliness out there in the internet. A lot of people also blaming whatever they hate in society for the fact that there's an eclipse that was predicted hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But obviously, the politics of your next door neighbor are what caused the eclipse. I won't even get into which side. So it's been a fun day. Completely pitch black in Dallas-Fort Worth for about 5 full minutes for Devin Scott. Sounds like an interesting day. Yeah, it's I know that here in Jersey City we were just kind of on the edge of it. We didn't get the full eclipse coverage or anything, but it looked like it was a little bit before sundown, kind of dusky kind of coloring here, but definitely not full pitch black for 5 minutes. But that's cool. Sounds pretty good. Seth kind of likes Arizona tonight. Has a contrarian mind. Yeah, I think there might be a few people on that one. Stephen B's here. What's going on, you guys? And pull up the spreadsheet to start things off. As you can see, I added took a few minutes and added the irrelevant 2024 stats to the board just so we've got this year's stuff to talk about. It's been a lot over the first 10 days or so talking about last year, and last year's the much more relevant stuff, but we always like to see what guys are doing out of the gate here, so we'll talk about that a little bit today. But really interesting board. I think it's a pretty good looking pitching slate with a lot of different options. Couple of true aces on the board, couple of reasonably priced pitchers at very, very good spots. We've got a Coors Field game. We've got some very good teams going against some very bad pitching. So looks like a spot that's kind of ripe on both sides of the game. Should be a fun one to break down and run through and build lineups for. Dimitri's here. What's going on, D? Drop third strike. Drop third strike was in Dallas. Got a great view of the eclipse. Crazy how the temperature dropped 20 degrees so fast. Yeah, you block the sun, and that might happen a little bit. That's cool. Very cool. I have aunt and uncle and cousins in Dallas. Cool town. I'm sure they'll actually probably have pictures of the eclipse that are probably in my text messages right now. My phone's been going nuts. I know a bunch of people out there are. Yep. Literally, as I was saying it, from my mom. That's the picture that my uncle took in Dallas of the eclipse. Pretty cool shot. Had a feeling that would be in there. Sir Spence the King enjoyed it. Very cool. We got some baseball to talk about, though, in addition to astronomy and whatever else you guys want to talk about. So as I was saying, big ace up at the top of the board, but kind of an interesting, fairly deep pitching slate. I like a lot of the options here, and I think we've got a lot to work with in terms of kind of obvious stacking spots, but maybe a couple that might be a little bit sneakier, might be a little bit good looking, where we can pick off some low ownership. Just looking at the board overall, 9 games up. Mariners at the Blue Jays to start things off. Blue Jays slightly favored, 4.16 implied total for them to the Mariners 3.92 in Toronto. Mets and the Braves, 10-run total in that one, second highest on the slate behind only Coors Field at 10.5. The Braves at a minus 205 favorites, 5.98 implied runs actually leads the slate out ahead of the Coors Field game. Might have some slight changes. That's very close, 5.98 to 5.93. And I put this in 2 hours or so ago. Doesn't matter. One way or the other, minor line movement wouldn't really change anything. Both the Braves and the Diamondbacks look pretty killer tonight. Braves going up against the ghost of Julio Teheran, who was signed by the Mets after spring. Don't expect much out of Julio tonight, and major power spot for the Braves. Dodgers with a 4.57 in Minnesota, going up against a decent but not great pitcher. We've talked about Jose Barrios a number of times. He's a little bit better than league average, but not a guy I really go out of my way to get to. So we'll get into that one. What am I talking about? That's the I'm thinking back in time. Jose Barrios is pitching for the Blue Jays against the Mariners. The Bailey Ober is on the mound for Minnesota tonight. The Eclipse has me frazzled, guys. Yeah, Bailey Ober, minor mistake there. Bailey Ober, targetable for the Dodgers, going up against Ober on the mound for the Twins. The Twins on the other side, kind of an interesting spot for Dodgers pitching. They've got James Paxton, walked 5, struck out 5 in the first game back. Good strikeout pitcher over time, but missed a couple of seasons. Kind of worked his way back into relevance for half a season last year. It's going to be really interesting because Twins have a little bit of power, a little bit of right-handed bat ability, but a lot of strikeouts in that lineup. So it's an interesting spot for Paxton. Twins at 4.03 implied runs, 121 total, or 121 underdogs, plus 121 underdogs at home. Phillies at the Cards, basically even up on the board in Vegas, 9 runs total, 4.52 for the Phils, 4.57 for the Cardinals. I like both offenses in that one. I actually like the Phillies pitcher a little bit there, and I don't really like the Cardinals pitcher. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. Astros and the Rangers, 9 run total there. Astros favored on the road, 4.88 implied total for them, 4.22 for the Rangers at home. Framber Valdez on the mound for the Astros. We like that spot. Coors Field game, you can get to the Rockies side of it, 4.69 implied total. They're going up against Zach Gallen, who is a premium pitcher, but not out of the gate strong. Hasn't really looked like himself on the mound. We're going to get to him in a big way in a little bit. But I'm a little concerned about Gallen, and especially, I don't want to go to him in Coors Field in a get-right spot. We did just see Ryan Pepio dominate this team yesterday for 11 strikeouts, the best start by a visiting pitcher ever at Coors Field. So it's possible, certainly, to beat this team, and Gallen, again, is a very, very good pitcher, but some bad indicators for Gallen early. The Rays at the Angels, 8.5 run total there, 4.64 implied total for the Rays, kind of like that stack. 3.96 for the Angels. I kind of like the look of Zach Eflin for a fair price going up against the Angels, so a lot of things Rays. Cubbies and the Pods, kind of a low-end game there in terms of expectation of runs. 7.5 run total there, 3.54 for the Cubs, 4.04 for the Padres. Slightly favors the Padres, but I'm not really getting a ton of Pods. They didn't rank out great on the board for me. Kind of prefer the Cubs offense if I'm picking an offense in that spot. But going up against Yu Darvish in a hitter's park with a low total, or pitcher's park rather, with a low total, no real reason to go running off and overloaded with Cubby shares. And then the Nats going up against Blake Snell. We've talked about the Nats, how they are a step better against left-handed pitching, but that takes them from being a step below average just to being average, right? So as compared to the rest of the league, they just become an average team when they're going up against a lefty, and Blake Snell, not all lefties created equal. He's one of the premium lefties in all of baseball. They've also got a few potential holes in that lineup if they roll with lefty-lefty matchups for Jesse Winker and Joey Gallo. So I don't know. I really like the spot for Snell. I don't really worry about that Nationals lineup. They could certainly ding him for a few runs. We could get a short start in his season debut. But we'll take a look at it. But right now, that one's looking very strong. And then I kind of like the Giants. 4.47 run implied total. I was just writing about them as the last game a few minutes ago. Article's up on the website, by the way. Full breakdown for all of this stuff. But I kind of think the Giants, going up against a pitcher who had 5+% home run rate last year, kind of an interesting spot with a 4.47 implied total. Maybe a little bit sneaky, maybe not the most popular stack in a 7.5 run game end of the night. It's not like a late night hammer kind of a spot. It's not a sure thing, but it's kind of interesting backing Snell up with some Giants. So we'll get into it. See what you guys are talking about. Wait, seriously? Frommer's not starting? When did that happen? I had not seen that yet. Is that a joke? I saw the follow-up that he looked at the sun without glasses and won't pitch tonight. That is a joke, I'm sure. Or I assume. I'm not, drop third strike. Where are you getting that? I'm not seeing that anywhere. Oh, yep, there we go. All right. Framber Valdez scratched from tonight. Blair Henley will start tonight. Well, that's interesting. That rockets the Rangers up the board. Oh, look at that. My buddy Lou was all over that 22 minutes ago. I missed that. All right. Let me pull a couple quick updates here. Let me do this. Bear with me one sec, guys. I'm just adding notes to the site real quick. Do that. And then... Great call out there, drop third strike. Really appreciate it. Would not have caught that. I mean, I would have later, but we would have talked the entire show about Fromber. Update is pending. What did I say that guy's name was? Blair Henley. Okay. Pending. All right. That's up to date. Now we just need Fangraphs real quick. What's the best way to do this? And I'm going to change these to 24. This is always fun, I know, watching me update things that you can't even see. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. 24. Probably won't matter because he's not on here. All right. Blair Henley, just to run through it real quick, worked exclusively in Double-A last year, missed all of 2022, it looks like, 106 and 2/3 in 2023 in Double-A as a 26-year-old, kind of advanced. Pitched to a 4.57 xFIP with a 5.06 ERA, struck out just 22.3% in Double-A, walked 11.1%. Yeah, this guy looks pretty targetable with Rangers bats to me. I think it's this I can grab. And we'll just put him in right over top of where Fromber was. Hopefully this still fits. Shit. What the fuck is different? Fangraphs added like 2 columns to a bunch of these things. And it just kind of screws up where everything goes. I'm just going to plug in his Double-A numbers from last year just to give us something to work with. This doesn't matter. None of that matters. 6 2/3. This is over the last couple of years. That's why you see some giant innings totals for some of these starters. 72 66, 104, 67 runs, 60 of them earned, 8 home runs to AA hitters, 53 walks. None of this matters. And 106 strikeouts. All right. Gives us a baseline to work with anyway. And I can't imagine he's going to be getting a very long leash. And he's not in there anyway. He is a right-handed pitcher. God damn it. He's on the DraftKings slate. He's not on the FanDuel slate because he's in there as a reliever on DK. So you do get him for $4,000 on DraftKings. It's just such a problem. Just adding him to the FanDuel sheet so that he pops up. Everything drives through FanDuel. So see, now we got a projection on him. I would not consider him a strong option, though, given those AA numbers against this Texas Rangers lineup in his major league debut at age 27, even at $4,000. You don't have to do much to pay that salary off. That's the one thing. A couple of strikeouts, but you got to avoid him getting badly dinged for negatives. So it's a little bit rough. Fanatic, you need a quieter keyboard. Well, I try not to type during the shows. But yeah, this was actually a replacement keyboard. Oh no, this one is the one that came with this computer when I bought this computer. It's just like the factory one. And I had a better one, but that was the USB one. That was the wireless USB. And for whatever reason, this mouse and the keyboard would just conflict with one another. So I couldn't use them both at the same time, so I scrapped that keyboard. I don't think you're hitting the keyboard hard enough. You should see me when I'm trying to get through the very end of the article, and I've written 12,000 words about the baseball slate, and I've got a show starting in like 5 minutes. I'm sitting there like mashing it. Anyway, why don't we get this thing started? We'll talk about the team that Jose Barrios actually plays for, the Toronto Blue Jays. This is what I'm saying about Barrios, right? We can look back over the last couple of years. Last year, 189 and 2/3, 23.5% strikeout rate, a 3.65 ERA, a 4.01 xFIP. This is perfectly good season, slightly above average strikeout rate, average-ish run numbers, pretty good walk rate, wasn't bad for home run power. Similar numbers a year before, but a 5.23 ERA, a 4.21 xFIP. He wasn't great in 2022, struck out 19.8% that season, had a better year the year before. It took 2021 off the board here. This year, over 2 starts out of the gate with just a 17% strikeout rate. That none of the green stats really matter yet. But a 2.25 ERA, 3.80 xFIP, has given up some premium contact so far, but has mostly looked like Jose Barrios in his starts. He does have a good matchup for strikeout upside. That's what I like about the spot for Barrios. And I think on DraftKings at 7,100, he's absolutely a bargain that you absolutely definitely should play. That is a great price for Jose Barrios. He's a $9,600 pitcher on FanDuel to illustrate the difference. That's where I think he's just okay. Just kind of an average pitcher and in a somewhat above average spot. Going back to what I've said about this Mariners team, and I think I'm justified over the first 10 days of the season or whatever, the average WRC plus for this version of the starting lineup is currently 72. Again, meaningless sample sizes. We're talking about an average of 31 plate appearances for those hitters, but that's not a great start for basically the entire lineup. Only Mitch Haniger and Josh Rojas right now above average for run creation, and that's not great. So not a priority stack, certainly for the Mariners, and they're averaging right now a 28.8% strikeout rate. This team was at 24.7% with this lineup configuration last year, so it is a very good strikeout opportunity for Barrios. And again, this is an aggressively low price. I really don't understand how he landed that cheap on the DraftKings slate. You can see him on the board right here, just as compared to everybody around him. Ignore Blair Henley. He's obviously not in that spot. You can see everybody around him and look where he is FanDuel price-wise. Spencer Turnbull is the Phillies pitcher that I mentioned. I like quite a bit in this spot, but I think he's got probably a more challenging matchup and certainly a more challenging matchup for strikeout potential. For only $200 more, take the strikeout upside with Jose Barrios in that spot. Paxton a little bit more expensive. Gallen at Coors Field. Javier Assad I don't really have much faith in this spot. Miles Michaelis I don't really like at all, but he's only $5,300. Going back to the value conversation real quick, I think I'd rather probably just take Michaelis shares for 53, even going up against the Phillies lineup, than taking that $4,000 Blair Henley shot at against Texas. I really don't think that one's going to work out, given what he was last year against Double-A competition at age 26. Didn't look great. If you are going to Mariners bets, it's, again, pretty weak up and down. There's some names. There's name recognition quality here. We'll see if we got the confirmed lineup in the last few minutes as I've been rambling. We've got Julio, who is definitely a star, but out to a rough start so far. Just 205, 262, 231 with a 52 WRC plus, no homers, does have 2 steals. Took him a while to get going last year. Could be a slow starter overall. Ended up making 714 plate appearances, hitting 32 home runs, stealing 37 bases, and creating runs 26% better than average. So he's clearly the go-to star in this lineup. You click him first. My next click is typically going to be J.P. Crawford. Had a 380 on base last year, just a 209 to start the season so far this year. But again, across only 43 plate appearances, doesn't really matter. He's a cheap correlated scoring play with a little bit of individual potential from the top of the lineup. Jorge Polanco, out to a rough start, has missed large chunks of the last few seasons. Still capable. Guy's a righty fanatic. So we might actually get a different lineup from Houston, but they're fairly consistent. I think it's going to be the same. I don't think there were any lefty-righty specifics in that lineup today, in the projected one that's in here. Yep, Devin gets it. Both SPs look good. Neither team is that scary, in Seattle striking out 32% to start the season against righties. Yeah, I don't have the split numbers in here. I just have the full. Just not enough screen space really to get everything in here. But yeah, even against righties, even better. Texas lineup drop. Thanks, Larry. We'll take a look in a sec. So just going down this Mariners lineup, if you are going to go there, I do think Mitch is playable. He's only striking out 17.1% of the time in the tiny sample early, walked a little bit, hasn't been the star caliber version of himself since 2021. Has a homer on the board, though, and the only guy in this lineup really who's getting regular plate appearances and creating runs above average in the early part of the season. Garver and Cal Raleigh can't play them together on the DraftKings slate. Tons of strikeouts, but a lot of power from the catcher spot. They haven't displayed it yet. They've both been equally pretty bad. But there's plenty of power upside there if you catch him on the right day. Luke Raley, a cheap power bat that I do like from the left side. Last year, 12.9% barrels, 45.7% hard hits. Does strike out a ton, 31.5% last year, 40% so far this year, and hasn't done anything with his 20 plate appearances. Rojas and Kenzone, just kind of afterthoughts at the bottom of the lineup in a pretty rough spot. So big yes to Jose Barrios on the DraftKings slate. Playable on FanDuel, but not a priority for me, but I do like the strikeout upside. I will have some. Bear with me. That's irrelevant. Luis Castillo on the other side, I think just effectively priced on both sides. 95, 94, one of the highest projected pitchers on the slate. Coming out of the gate over his first 2 starts, 10 2/3 pitch, 24% strikeouts. 6.75 ERA looks bad with a 4% home run rate, but that's just minor happenstance in a very, very tiny sample. A 3.25 xFIP tells you a little bit more of the truth. He's put a few too many guys on base via the base hit, 1.78 whip so far, but only a 6% walk rate. Overall, just some early season numbers. I think Luis Castillo totally fine here. We've seen the Blue Jays get no hit already. There's some strikeouts in this lineup as you go down the lineup this year. The top end, still very, very good. George Springer, Vladdy Guerrero, and Bo Bichette, very good, very low strikeout. Adding Justin Turner to that gives them a 4th low strikeout guy. Excellent hit tool and good mid-range power. Kind of applies to all of those guys. Bo Bichette in that group is out to the worst start. Hasn't hit for power. Each of George Springer and Vladdy at least have 2 home runs on the board. All 3 guys below the Mendoza line to start the season over a tiny sample. Not really worried about those guys. Springer and Vladdy both creating runs at a 17% better than average clip in the tiny, tiny sample. But they really need to get going, and it is just a top-heavy lineup. It really cuts off Davis Schneider in there, righty against Castillo. He gets more of his upside against lefties. Does have 2 home runs in 16 plate appearances, a 158 ISO. Barreled the ball at a 17.8% clip with 38.4% hard hits last year. Hit 9 home. Which line was he on? Hit 8 home runs in 141. Was that him? Yeah. 8 home runs in 141 plate appearances. Just cost $2,800 at second base, $4,000 in the outfield on DraftKings. Probably like him better at second base if I'm going there on the FanDuel slate than I do on the DraftKings slate, where he's just another outfielder for price, but not a priority and not against Castillo. Kevin Biggio, Alejandro Kirk, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Kevin Kiermaier, these are like either flawed hitters or defense first guys. Really weak bottom third of the lineup here for Toronto. So big yes to both pitchers. For Berrios, it's more limited on FanDuel just because I think he's a little bit overpriced for his quality, but could easily put up a strong start. Castillo on both sites at price. Blue Jays really only the top end in small doses, and Mariners, you're picking and choosing your spots. It's like 1, 2, any of these 4 guys, a mixer, or maybe a mix of those 5 guys. Pick 3 of those 5. But it's not a great spot for either of these teams. Mets and the Bravos. Let me see what's in that lineup that dropped up on, got the Rangers and the Phils. Rangers, Semyon Seager, Langford, Garcia, Carter, Smith, Walsh, Knizer. I like Andrew Knizer. Let me grab this real quick. I know we're not on that game, but we might as well just grab it. All right, so what did I just say? Semyon Seager, Langford, Adolis, Carter. That's Josh Smith. Then Jared Walsh. Andrew Knizer and Noda Taveras. And we also got the Phils. Thank you to Underdog MLB for their great work getting these lineups out promptly. Shorts, Turner, Harper, Bohm. It's more like this one. Sharps, Turner, Harper, Bohm. No real mood on tonight. We get Garrett Stubbs instead. Do that. And we get Stott up a spot. Castellanos up a spot. Marsh. And Johan Rojas. That is Stubbs' name, right, Garrett? Pretty sure. Yep. All right. Back to the Mets and the Braves. So, the ghost of Julio Teheran back in baseball. 6,200 on both sites. Projects for a 15 on FanDuel and a 7 on DraftKings. Doesn't really look all that playable at the price on either site to me. Not against this Braves team. Not with these ridiculous home run marks that the Braves are pulling against him. Last year, Teheran pitched 11 starts, 71 2/3. That was a comeback after missing all of 2022. 4.40 ERA with a 4.67 xFIP. Didn't walk that many, but also didn't strike out anybody. 8.9% swinging strike rate, a pretty weak CSW. The whip was fine because he's not walking anybody, and he didn't, I guess, give up a ton of BABIP there, but gave up a 4.51% home run rate on 41.6 miles an hour of exit velo, 10% barrel rate, and you just can't do that against this Braves lineup. So really like the spot for the Braves going up against Teheran in his first start, and just wouldn't play Teheran regardless of price. I don't think he's going to be long for this start. I think this top end of the Braves, the bottom end of the Braves, they're stackable just up and down that lineup from 1 through 9. Just pretty much whatever combination you can put those guys in. There's really no issues, even if it was those 5. Even if you just took Ozuna down, that's still a perfectly serviceable stack. Very cheap in compared to the top end of the lineup, but very, very playable. I would consider Charlie Morton. He's very, very high priced at 10,000. He's still very good. Made 1 start, 5 2/3, struck out 27.3, whatever that amounts to. I forgot the strikeout total in the 5 2/3 start. But again, this is fairly irrelevant. Last year, 163 1/3 over 30 starts. Not the greatest depth in the world. On FanDuel, that can maybe limit you in some spots of booking the quality start, like this one. Came out after an out short of it. Didn't give up any runs in that one, but a 4.16 xFIP for that game. But last year, 3.64 ERA, 4.27 xFIP, walked too many, but struck out a decent clip, 25.6%, 12.6% swinging strike rate, and a 30.7% CSW. Still a very good strike thrower, inducer of strikes, didn't give up many home runs last year whatsoever. So Morton is still, maybe he's diminished a little bit for his old age, but still a pretty high-end starter. I just think 10,000 makes him a little tough to reach on a slate that includes a lot of options, several of which are premium starters at better prices. Even these I like better. I just think he's an awkward fit today. And I think the Mets, as mediocre as they might be, they're not a total pushover lineup. So I just don't love the value you get from Morton, but I could easily see him succeeding here. So I would consider some shares of him across 150. I can't imagine he's all that highly owned in this spot, given that price. So check the ownership on your respective site and make your decision. He's easily playable from a talent versus lineup perspective, but the price is just off. Devin Scott loves Olsen in the bottom portion of the Braves lineup. What are you saying there, Larry? By the way, Terry, OP, MLB, Optimizers, and Sims's. Oh, Ace Mind. Are you reminding me? Yeah, thank you, Larry. I appreciate the reminder, buddy. I meant to talk about Ace Mind off the top. They're making their formal announcement about the MLB tools. I think it went out a little while ago. It's probably up on Twitter. But partner of ours that you guys have seen through the NBA shows. Haven't used the data on the streams yet, but I'm going to work that in. It's going to replace the Top Stacks tool once I just have time to sit with it and make sure that I've got everything where I need it to be and have it all wired. And I don't like sharing data that I'm not comfortable with. Let's put it that way. I'm very comfortable with their results. I haven't gotten enough experience in the tool myself yet to get where I want to be. So as soon as we get that taken care of, that'll be in here to replace the Top Stacks tool on the site, and we'll get it somewhere. Maybe we'll have a separate look at like top stack percentages or something on the show. Or maybe I'll find some room to build in the numbers here and they'll pop up with each team and change or something like that for each of them. I'll consider how to best display that. But the overall point, Ace Mind, if you're looking for a site that offers both an optimizer and sims at a really, really good price compared to the entire rest of the industry, with all the capability, all the functionality you could possibly want, check out acemind.io. Guys have got pretty killer tools over there. They're very sharp guys who have been doing this in the DFS space for quite a while and have been working on these tools for quite a while. They were up in a more community open source kind of a version for a while as they were refining them, and now they've got them into a place where it just makes a really sharp commercial tool for them. So I'm happy for those guys to have launched the site pretty successfully so far. I'm happy that the baseball tools are up and running. You can check them out for 3 days for free. Just if you go to their site, acemind.io, and just pull up their page, you should be able to create an account and go for free for 3 days. And then if you like what you see, if you use promo code rotoscouts, all caps, like you see it on the screen there, gets you 20% off your first month from Ace Mind. So pretty good partner. David Soto says they've been great and I've won 6 days in a row. Love it. Chris says Ace Mind tools have a learning curve or I'm just dumb either way. Difficult UI, aka not a dev. Oh shit, it's a website now. Yeah, Chris, it should be if you're using the actual site rather than the tools that used to be open source. Definitely there's a very improved, very user-friendly GUI, a lot of drag and drop and just very easy, straightforward couple clicks. They've got default settings that you can use. So if you don't need to get in there and really tinker with anything, you can get good results out of just the default settings. But again, full optimizer, full sims for NBA, MLB, MMA. They're working on all kinds of other stuff. I think they've either got PGA or PGA's coming soon. So check out Ace Mind. That's the name of their site right there. I built a tab in. I just have to get this up and running so that I'm pulling the projections data across. And what drives me nuts with baseball is there's all these extra players on the salary sheets. So I got to figure out an efficient way to do that. That's part of my challenge is getting my data ported over. But it becomes a very easy process once you got everything up and running. So definitely check out acemind.io. So anyway, Charlie Morton, a little bit overpriced, but a very talented pitcher in a not bad spot. Julio Teheran wouldn't go near him. We're stacking Braves against them aggressively here. You can see for yourselves the top, 5 hitters in the projected lineup, or the confirmed lineup, rather, all have marks over our magic number in the home run model. We also get Michael Harris, who is probably a little bit underappreciated by the home run model right now. He's got pretty good power, excellent speed. Orlando Arcia, who hit 17 quiet home runs for this team last year and is priced at just 2,800, 3,600 at shortstop. Travis d'Arnaud, who has good power for a backup catcher, is very cheap at the bottom of the lineup. Jared Kelenic, former washed-out Mets prospect, revenge, has had some rough seasons, but there's still raw talent there. I'm still a believer in Kelenic. I was trying to buy him in the Dynasty League this offseason. If anybody can fix him, I think this Braves team can. So I kind of like the Kelenic spot. He's also out over his first 21 plate appearances, 579, 619, 737 with a 270 WRC+. No homers yet, but a decent start with the stick. That's always encouraging to see from somebody that you're looking for upside from. And then the top of the lineup, it's just a super duper star, probably the best player in baseball. One of, if not the absolute best second baseman in baseball. Definitely the best second baseman for power. Austin Riley, probably the best power hitting third baseman in baseball. Matt Olson, the best power hitting first baseman, not named Pete Alonso. And it's really neck and neck with those two guys. So it's just a ridiculous run of power through those four. And they get a discounted Marcell Ozuna. 4,600 on DraftKings is pretty cheap for a guy who has 4 home runs on the board over 36 plate appearances this year and hit 40 last year. I feel like Ozuna doesn't get appreciated enough. He should be priced in the 5s, kind of like these guys. Maybe not, we're not getting to the 6s, but he should probably get the respect that Albies and Riley do in this lineup. FanDuel's got the right idea at 37, but that's arguably a little bit cheap too. But just again, 1 through 9 with this lineup all day, every day against Julio Teheran. On the Mets side, they're a little top heavy. It's a flawed lineup as you go down the lineup. They're throwing some lefties at Charlie Morton. There's a little bit of power upside for 3,000, 2,300 for DJ Stewart, 5.78 in the home run model. He's 0 for his first 16 plate appearances, which isn't great to start the year. 37.5% strikeout rate. He has walked at a decent clip. He does have a decent contact profile. Hit a handful of home runs, 11 home runs in 185 plate appearances last year. Maybe a lefty bat to keep in your pocket for power upside if you're stacking like from here and then you need one more guy. Maybe you grab DJ Stewart. Jeff McNeil, Joey Wendell, I don't love at the bottom of the lineup. Starling Marte, moderate power left in the bat, maybe. Out to an okay start with a 351 on base, a 114 WRC+. He stole 2 bases the other day. Yankees signed Josh Massajuski, probably. Option Jake Cousins. Totally irrelevant news. So yeah, McNeil, Wendell, I think we're skipping Marte. Out to an okay start, stole 2 bases. He's priced down 2,900, 3,800. So if you're stacking Mets, Marte's definitely in the mix. Brett Beatty, a lefty bat that I think is kind of interesting for 31.26. I've mentioned it a few times. 43.4% hard hit rate across the season last year. In kind of a disappointing year of output. In 34 plate appearances to start this year, 113 WRC+, 290, 350, 387. Got a home run on the board. Get him out on the right foot, and I'd like to see what he could do this year. So I think Beatty for cheap is kind of interesting in the 5 spot. And then the top 4 guys, pretty obvious. Francisco Alvarez, still very cheap as a catcher. Premium contact, has a home run on the board already, a 222 ISO over his first 29 plate appearances. The premium contact I was referring to is last year, 12.5%, 44.3% hard hits. Hits behind Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo. Kind of a good RBI spot if Pete Alonso's not clearing the bases ahead of you. Alonso's very cheap at 3,300 on FanDuel. 53 on DraftKings is also pretty cheap. So is 5,200 for Francisco Lindor. 3,000 is definitely discounted for him. All 3 of these guys are too cheap on the FanDuel slate, actually. To get those 3 hitters for an average of 3,067, so 3,000, it's pretty affordable. None of them are off to a good start. Alonso's got 2 home runs at least, but a 60 WRC+. But none of that matters. I know these are 3 good hitters. Lindor, 30-30 upside. Nimmo, very good on base skills with pretty good mid-range power. Just not a great matchup going up against Charlie Morton. If I'm stacking Mets, it's like 1, 2, 3. On DraftKings, I'll take Alvarez. On FanDuel, I might skip and go to one of these guys as my fourth man in. Not that I don't like Alvarez, and he's only 2,700, but I don't know that I want to occupy the util spot because I got to get Pete Alonso in there at first, or util, obviously. I don't know that I want to occupy that other spot with Alvarez. But not a great priority stack. Braves, bats, like top priority in the entire slate. They outrank Coors for the top stack spot. So extreme high priority spot. We're going to be talking about them all year. Just get used to it. I know we're already sick of it. Charlie Morton, playable but too high priced. Julio Teheran, not playable. Mets, meh, kind of mid-range at best. Dodgers going up against Bailey Ober. Definitely looking like a good spot for Dodgers bats. They don't quite rival the Braves at the top in terms of the home run model, but they're not far off. You got Teoscar just under the magic number, Will Smith just under the magic number, Freddie Freeman just under it, Max Muncy, Shohei Ohtani, and Mookie Betts over it. Just don't quite peak as high and don't have the full run of guys over 10, but we are neck and neck for power upside here. Ober was tragic in his first start, an inning in a third. None of this matters. If we look at last year for Bailey Ober, he is an effective right-handed pitcher. I actually like Bailey Ober, just not against this team, and he does allow enough power to make it believable for the Dodgers upside. 3.43 ERA last year with a 5.20 xFIP, only walk 5%, reasonably good strikeout rate at 25.3, just a 1.07 whip, had a very good 13.8% swinging strike rate, but just a 27.5% CSW. These don't really go together like that. That means he's not throwing nearly enough called strikes, and that could be kind of deadly against a team like this Dodgers lineup. So I'm not really getting strong numbers for Bailey Ober on his own. It's a borderline low-end playable, low-faith kind of a play on FanDuel, and he would need to be cheaper to make it, and I think it's kind of the same on DraftKings, even as an SP2. Like, why do you want to tangle with the Dodgers? Just doesn't look like Bailey Ober's day. James Paxton, like I said, is kind of interesting to me. You've got a fairly high strikeout Twins team on the other side. Best way to do this, since we're missing a few guys in here, we could go like that. And the average strikeout rate for this group, 22% last year with Jose Miranda helping out, Carlos Santana helping out, and Manny Margot helping out. But some of the key hitters, Byron Buxton at 31.4% last year, Jeffers at 27.8%, Correa at 22.6%, and also out to a great start, by the way. But no, I don't want to move it. And then Kyle Farmer, Christian Vasquez, guys, these are fairly high strikeout guys. Their averages just helped out a little bit by a couple of the low strikeout dudes, which also matters for James Paxton. Paxton needs to be in control, needs to not walk 5 guys. He struck out 5, walked 5 in 5 innings in his debut start for the Dodgers the other day. Need a little bit more depth. I'm kind of concerned about the ability to get to the quality start. But I think at 86, 87, there's enough strikeout upside to make him kind of interesting. 6 clean with a handful of strikeouts. I think we're pretty much there with Paxton. So I'll definitely have it in a couple of lineups at least. I've got him starting this week as a pickup in the Dynasty League because he's making 2 starts. So I kind of like the spot. I think it does pay to maybe consider some Twins hedge stacks, though, especially if you get over the top with Paxton. Grab a few of the Twins. You know, there's a little bit of upside in the home run model for Byron Buxton. Doesn't have any on the season yet. Just a 98 WRC plus and a rough triple slash to start. 17 home runs on the board last year and a half a season. Just never healthy enough to really get going in a full way. But when he is out there, does have, you know, a star ceiling, superstar maybe, if you want to catch him on the right day. Correa is definitely off to a good start. 364, 533, 455 with a 206 WRC plus over a whopping 30 plate appearances. Had a rough year last year, but nothing to do with injury. Played a full season. 22.6% strikeouts, did walk 10.2% of the time. Starting out the season on the right foot with those 2 categories. By the way, I put in the 2024 strikeout and walk rates, but I didn't put in the StatCast barrels and hard hits. Just not enough batted ball events for these guys in this tiny, tiny sample. So we'd be looking at like, hey, he's got a 100% hard hit rate. It just doesn't make any sense yet. So we're waiting on those. That's why we still got 22 and 23 StatCast numbers here. Wilson Contreras scratched. All right. Appreciate that, Dev. Just Ivan Herrera stepping into the same spot in the lineup, I assume. Or actually, no, they moved Contreras up, so it's probably, yeah, Herrera down. All right. So it's back to the original lineup. But Ivan Herrera, let me just do that now. Oh, that's weird. So it's Herrera 5. So with Herrera joining the lineup, they also flip-flop Burleson and Walker. And then Mason Winter, Victor Scott to round things out. All right. Taken care of. Appreciate the note there. So, yeah, Paxton on the board for me. But again, I think we can consider some of these Twins. I don't love Manny Margot at the top of the lineup here. He's okay at avoiding strikeouts, putting the ball in play, although in 12 plate appearances so far, he's striking out nearly half the time. But just hasn't really had an opportunity to get things going. Last year, over 336, he hit 4 home runs, stole 9 bases, created runs 7% worse than average for that frisky Rays team. The year before that, similar sample, 363. He was a little bit better. 4 homers, 7 steals, but a 106 WRC plus, got on base at a 325 clip. But nobody is going to Manny Margot off the top here, I don't think. Correa, definitely a good option. He's cheap at 33.44. Jeffers is playable as a catcher with a little bit of power. Hasn't really started his season yet either. Jose Miranda, not available on the FanDuel slate. A $3,200 third baseman on DraftKings. Miranda, over 152 last year. 211, 263, 303, 57 WRC plus. Not overly appealing. He was one of those guys that's cutting the strikeout average from last year down a little bit in his small sample. Kyle Farmer, a guy that we do like, triple position eligible for only $2,100 on the FanDuel slate, $2,800 on DraftKings. He's third base only, which kind of sucks. His value comes from his flexibility and the mid-teen sneaky kind of pop. 14 home runs a couple years ago, 11 last year in a quarter of it, or in 2/3 of a season, 369 plate appearances. So Farmer maybe a little frisky for the cheap positional flex, but really not a killer spot for him on the FanDuel slate. Christian Vasquez, Carlos Santana, Austin Martin. We're not really dipping down to the bottom of the Twins lineup here for very much quality. So it's big yes to the Dodgers bats wherever you can afford them. Basically 1 through at least 7 or 1 through 6 in a strong way, and then 7, 8, and 9 are all very capable options. And I like that they're going lefty heavy at the bottom of the lineup with those 3 lefty bats. Don't really need to talk about these 3 guys. They're absolute superstars. Average WRC plus of 191 to start the season. Mookie's got 5 home runs. Everybody's got a steal in that group. Ohtani's got 2. Freddie's got 1. Everybody's hitting the ball to start the year, getting on base to start the year. They're just outrageous. Will Smith, 4,900, 3,400, pretty affordable. Low strikeout, 13.3% in the small sample so far this year, 16.1% last year for a full season. Plays every day, out to a 415, 444, 512 start with a 165 WRC plus. Slightly larger samples with the 2 additional games from the Soul series for the Dodgers and Diamondbacks? Whoever the hell that was. Forgotten already. Going down the lineup, Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez. Plenty of power upside from those guys. Muncy with 1 on the board so far. Teoscar with 4 on the board already this year. Great lefty-righty tandem for premium contact, for home run power. A lot of strikeouts between the 2 of them. Last year averaged a 28.8% strikeout rate. This year so far, 41.3%. But tons and tons of home run upside. Gavin Lux is a toolsy second baseman for 3,300, 2,500 from the left side. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed. Outman, same thing. 25 kind of a player. He was 23-16 last year. There's upside for more than that. Call it 20-20 with upside. And then Taylor Trammell, largely absent from the last 2 seasons. 117 plate appearances 2 years ago, 4 homers, 2 steals. 56 plate appearances last year, 3 homers. But was at one point a decently highly regarded prospect coming up with Seattle. And dead minimum price as a lefty in this spot going up against a vulnerable Ober. I don't dislike it as a wraparound play. Got a little bit of speed. He's 26 now. Call it 26 and a half. In AAA last year, 21 home runs, 17 stolen bases, over 391 plate appearances for Seattle. 26% strikeout rate, but a 16% walk rate at 262 ISO. That's playing in AAA as a 25-year-old, which is the outside range of where you start considering, hey, this guy's a little advanced age for that level. But that's a really good season. And he's had numbers like that going back through his minor league career. A lot of stolen bases, good mid-range to, 20-ish home runs is probably the absolute ceiling. Just hasn't really landed, has been hurt a lot. So anytime he's gotten a major league opportunity, it's been as a fill-in player behind somebody else who's gotten hurt. He's been hurt. But decent numbers through the minors, still a little bit of expectation here. So for very, very cheap as a sneaky option to average down the prices of the top end as a wraparound, Taylor Trammell, at least one to keep in mind. So Bailey Ober, Twins bats, playable, hedge stack if you're taking your Paxton shares. I like Paxton from the mid-range at 86, 87. I definitely want to have some of him with the strikeout upside. And then Dodgers bats top to bottom all day against Bailey Ober, one of the prime spots of the day. Devin Scott, Twins feel so mid this year. You look at some of their lineups and go, yeah, they should deal here. And then they lose 3-1 or something along those lines. Yeah, it's the Twins, the Blue Jays. There's a couple teams like that, a couple good names in there. A couple teams that are like, all right, there's upside here. But then as you look down the lineup, it really diminishes fast. Particularly that Blue Jays one. They're one I'm really sour on to start the year. The Mariners, I've kind of soured on year over year. Just don't really love that lineup this year, and so far it's held up. But yeah, I would put the Twins on that list. And they're just biding their time until the next Buxton injury, and then they look even worse day to day. I think this is a killer spot for the Phillies against Miles Mikolas. They're not showing crazy high-end power. You do get Schwarbs off the top at a 12.19 in the home run model today. You get stars in Trey Turner and Bryce Harper right behind him. We've got Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh. I like 1 through 7 in this lineup if I'm stacking this team. The reason I want to go there, they're going up against Mikolas, who is just basically an innings eater. 10 and a third, 2 starts so far this year. Not really eating too many innings there. 6.10 ERA, but a 3.83 xFIP. He's given up some premium contact and some power early. Struck out a couple more than I would have expected him to over those 2 starts. I don't remember what the totals were, but we know who Miles Mikolas is. 201 and a third over 35 starts last year, 15.9% strikeout rate. Doesn't really walk too many, but still a 1.32 whip because he's eminently hittable. 4.78 ERA to a 4.76 xFIP means he's who he looks like on the surface. 9.8% barrels, 42.8% hard hits, more than 90 miles an hour of exit velo on average, 3.02% home run rate. That with this, that could easily have been 4+. Could also probably have gone down to like 2.75, if we're arguing. The year before it was better for premium contact, 3.11% home run rate. You can see that this was slightly higher despite better premium contact. So home runs, again, a little bit weird, but just 19% strikeouts, better ERA and xFIP that season. Just a very hittable pitcher. I think, like I said at the top of the show, if you want to consider a just total bargain bin SP2 on DraftKings, at 53, maybe you can get away with it because he just doesn't need to do much. And I think I do like it better than the rookie for the Astros at 4,000. But it's very, very thin. You're trying to thread a very thin needle there against a very good Phillies lineup. So I don't love that. At the bottom of the Phillies, you get Garrett Stubbs and Johan Rojas. Rojas hasn't done much over 25 plate appearances to start this year, but he was pretty good in 164 last year. Stole 14 bases, 302, 342, 430, 109 WRC plus. Still a very small sample, but certainly bigger than what we've got to work with so far this year. I just think he's kind of cheap and has some interesting wraparound ability, especially when you're putting him ahead of the best home run hitter on the team. So I don't mind that as a cheap wraparound, helps average down the prices. I think Trey Turner is very cheap at $3,200 on FanDuel. $58 on DraftKings is about right. $5,700 on Bryce Harper on DK, maybe a little cheap. $3,900 is correct on FanDuel. So you go back and forth playing the value game. But the top 3 are very stackable. Rojas from the bottom helps you average down the cost. And then you take one of Boehm, Stott, Castellanos, or Brandon Marsh, who are all quality options. Marsh last year from the left side, 48.7% hard hit rate with a 9.1% barrel. Castellanos carried this team for stretches last year, 10.3% barrel, 43% hard hits. Bryson Stott, not great in terms of the premium contact, but doesn't strike out, walks at a good clip, 15.6% strikeout rate last year, just 12.5% so far this year. Hasn't really gotten it going this year. A couple of stolen bases, but last year finished with 15 and 31. Creator runs 1% better than average. I like him to do better than that this year. So it's a Phillies lineup that I can get behind. Spencer Turner, Travis Wyndham, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Devin Scott loves Brandon Marsh at the bottom of the Philly lineup. I totally agree, Dev. Especially 3,600 is pretty cheap for him. That's not a bad price. 2,800 on the FanDuel slate. Not bad at all. These home run marks could arguably be a little bit higher given the premium contact for Michaelis. It's just the fact that he's lucked out with avoiding some of those home runs in years past. But this could be the year he ends up giving up an egregiously higher number in terms of home run power. So I kind of like the Phils here. And I like the Cardinals. We're going to talk about the Cardinals all year long, as usual. That's been for better or worse over the past couple of seasons. You do get very cheap pricing on the top end hitters. 32 for Donovan, 39 on DraftKings. On Paul Goldschmidt, 5,100 on DraftKings is the highest mark on the entire team. And that's not all that high for a hitter like Paul Goldschmidt. 3,300 on the FanDuel slate, totally affordable. Arenado at 4,829 across sites at third base is cheap. Gorman, for all his power upside, is very cheap at 4,000, 3,000. You get multi-position on him on FanDuel. Ivan Herrera is out to a decent start. He's got a home run on the board over his 22 plate appearances, 300, 273, 450. Reasonably good catcher with a lot of prospect pedigree for 2,800 on DraftKings where you have to play the position. Not bad. The thing about it is, I kind of like Spencer Turnbull. He came up, had a good start over 5 innings. Struck out, I want to say 7. It's in the article. But he debuted a new sweeper that's an aggressively good pitch. Really good stuff, plus marks on it. Came up with a bunch of swinging strikes and a good strikeout rate in his first start. And he's historically been pretty good at keeping the ball in the yard. Over his, let me pull up the article so I can get it. It's like 1,300 batters faced in his career, and he's been in and out of rotations over time. He debuted with Detroit in 2018. But since that 2018 debut, he's been at how did I put it? There it is. 24 home runs to 1,332 batters faced over his career. That's a 1.8% home run rate for his career since his debut in 2018. Again, his aggressively missed time. Just 7 starts last year, 31 innings, a 16.6% strikeout rate, a 10.3% walk rate, missed all at 22. But with a very effective looking new pitch, going up against a maybe good, not great Cardinals team, I do think there's upside for their bats. I think it's a tester spot for the, who is Spencer Turnbull going to be this year conversation. But at 77, 69, I think he's at least interesting for this DFS slate to take a few shots on. Better to be early than late. So let's get him before the price goes up. If he is actually real this year, if he does actually have a little bit more strikeout upside, if he can do that while limiting home runs, you can see his effect on the home run model. Right? These guys are normally the 7s, the 8s in an average spot, and they can trend over the magic number pretty easily. So I kind of like the spot for Turnbull. Could go south, could go pear-shaped easily. Not saying to roster him as your most popular starter, but at 6,900, he's probably my leading candidate for SP2 shares on DraftKings. That is true, right? Yeah. Unless you're considering Darvish at 84. But this is an interesting conversation. Barrios at 71 with strikeout upside, or Turnbull against St. Louis for 69. That's at least worthy of a conversation, and I think they're reasonably comparable. I think there's good reason to have some shares of both, probably around the same amounts. You can make it a popularity thing, whichever one is less popular, and I suspect that'll be Turnbull. Whichever one is less popular, you can make the choice for your SP2 shares. But yeah, really like the Turnbull spot. And if I'm going to the Cards, it is those top 4 hitters. It is Herrera on top of that. Burleson I don't love, but at least he's cheap from the left side with a minor amount of pop. I do like Jordan Walker, and I think he's very cheap at $25.37 for all his talent. Mason Wynn, Victor Scott, Scott, just a total speed burner, but has not really done well with the actually getting to first base part of the equation that we've talked about so much. .083 average, 154 on base, a 139 slug, which doesn't matter at all for him, but it's only allowed him to steal 1 base so far in his 39 plate appearances. He's played basically every day since he came up, but just has not been good yet at actually getting on base. All the speed in the world, 94, I think it was, stolen bases over 2 levels of the minors last year. So, Phillies bats, big yes. Miles Michaelis, not really, but if you need the $5,300 dart on DraftKings for value, I wouldn't begrudge you the spot. Turnbull is a yes, but it's kind of like with the risk of experimentation for a value price. I think we're maybe getting in early on a guy, so I kind of like that. And then the Cards, especially if you're taking Turnbull shares, I think top end of the Cards at the very least, take a few hedge stacks. Astros and the Rangers, do we have the Astros lineup yet? We do. 5 minutes ago. Probably the usual routine for them. Just grab this from right here. Saved ourselves a click if I do it that way. Just got to remember that I got to do it as paste as values. Otherwise we get wonky formulas. Altuve, Alvarez, Tucker, Bregman. Ooh, McCormick. All right. McCormick. No Giant or DS tonight. All right, confirm lineup for the Astros, confirm lineup for the Rangers. This is no longer a great pitching matchup. The Rangers are definitely going to be a target. It wasn't a great pitching matchup to begin with. We had one great pitcher in it. I misspoke there. We no longer have Framber Valdez to work with. Andrew Heaney does have strikeout ability from the left side. I'll never take that away from Heaney, but he's very tricky. Gives up a lot of power. Has his bad days. He's the other guy I used the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde discussion for. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Heaney. That one's easier to remember. 7,578. I do think you could squeeze a little bit of upside out of him against more mortal teams. With Alvarez and Tucker both way over the mark for home run upside. Altuve over the mark for home run upside. Bregman pushing it. McCormick kind of pushing it. Low strikeout rates for that entire group of hitters. I just don't think this is Andrew Heaney day. I think he's a target here. 147 and a third last year, 4.15 ERA with a 4.58 xFIP. Gave up a 3.59 home run rate, which on its own isn't tragic. But the year before, he was at 4.52 over 72 and 2/3. He's been at high points in other years in his career. And he gave up a lot of premium contact. So keeping this below 4, probably a little happenstance there. 10.2% barrels, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo. He's a very gettable starter. So I wouldn't go to Heaney, even though he's fairly priced. I would definitely consider the Astros lineup. They would project out as one of the better spots overall. 4 guys over the magic number with several other guys chasing it. And while these guys are highly priced, they deserve to be highly priced. Kyle Tucker is at $3,400 is pretty cheap on FanDuel. Jose Altuve for $52 is probably a little cheap on DraftKings. Then you get a discounted Alex Bregman, $2,800, $4,700 across sites. He's out to a bad start, 171, 275, 229. He took a quality dip last year, but still did end up with 25 home runs, 100 plus runs scored, a 125 WRC plus. Was perfectly fine for DFS purposes, and he's cheap. McCormick for $4,000, $2,800 for his upside for power and speed is definitely cheap. Jeremy Pena at $38.29, off to a good start. Maybe a bounce back for him after a weak second season last year. 2 home runs, a stolen base on the board, a 164 WRC plus over his tiny 38 plate appearance sample this year. Just very cheap for a guy out to a good start who had quality 2 years ago. 22 homers, 11 steals, and 558 2 years ago. Dipped to 10 and 13 last year. Then we get a weak bottom third with Jose Abreu, Mauricio Dubon, and Victor Caratini in it. You do have lurking any given slate home run potential out of Jose Abreu, but he's off to a bad start again this year after the weird 18 months between the end of 2022 and all of 2023. So I don't love the Abreu spot even for the cheap pricing. Dubon, Caratini kind of afterthoughts, but 1 through 6 rather at the very least, pretty stackable here against Heaney. On the Rangers side, now that we're going up against Blair Henley, who again, minor league numbers just did not look very good in Double-A, pitching at an advanced age in Double-A last year. To read them off one more time, 25 Double-A appearances, it was 17 starts, 106 and 2/3, pitching in Double-A ball as a 26-year-old in 2023. This is coming back from what must have been an injury to miss the 2022 season. I don't know enough top of my head about this guy. But a 4.57 xFIP in Double-A, a 5.06 ERA, struck out just 22.3% of Double-A hitters and walked 11.1%. Just seems very gettable. Didn't give up a ton of power. I'll give him that. 8 home runs to 476 Double-A hitters. That's in a home run per 9 sense. That's a 0.68 home run per 9. Made 1 AAA start before the call-up this year and gave up 2 home runs in that game. Struck out 6, gave up 2 home runs, walked 4. 4 hits in 5 innings, faced 22 hitters, AAA. I don't think this is a spot, even for 4,000, that we want to throw this kid into the Texas Rangers. Even a diminished version of the Texas Rangers is pretty dangerous here with the top end. Even at this price, it's a little bit difficult to believe. I definitely want to stack the Rangers now. They were at very low home run marks earlier. You can see the home run upside has bounced back for Corey Seager. Everybody in this lineup was below 5 against Framber because all Framber does is induce ground balls. Well, not all he does, but one of the things he does very, very well is induce ground balls. Jared Walsh is in that lineup twice. That's weird. Let me fix that. That should be Josh Smith, right? Yeah, Josh Smith in that spot. There he is. Semien, Seager, Langford, Garcia, Carter, Smith, Walsh, Kniser, Taveras. Yeah, got it. So I definitely think we're going to this Rangers lineup now. So it's basically bats on both sides. Marcus Semien off the top, Corey Seager off the top, 2 absolute stars in the middle infield, 49.59 on DraftKings, 37.38 on FanDuel. It's just a great tandem to get that much quality at second base and shortstop as a pairing at the top of a lineup. Just has tremendous, tremendous value in it. You get them hitting ahead of Wyatt Langford, who it was great when the games didn't count over his first 42 plate appearances in the show. Now we're seeing 237, 286, 316, just a .079 ISO. Hasn't hit a homer, hasn't stolen a base. It's been 36% worse than average creating runs so far. Rangers have enough. I'm rooting against him. I'm not actually. I want to see the kid do well, but 4,200, 3,000. Pretty effective pricing for the 3-hitter in the Rangers lineup now, hitting between Corey Seager and Adolis Garcia. There's a lot of upside for that price. He helps you average down the prices of the stars around him. So I think that's a pretty killer spot. Adolis Garcia, 4 home runs on the board already, a stolen base, a 162 WRC plus, a monster 351 ISO to start the season. Just a killer outfielder for 5,200 on DraftKings. It's pretty cheap over there too. That's not a high enough price. He's a $4,100 outfielder on FanDuel. That makes a lot more sense. Evan Carter, good stick. Just 192, 400, 308, but you like the 400 despite the 192 on the front end. He's walked a little bit, 22.9% walk rate, 8.6% strikeout rate so far this season, putting a lot in play when he's not walking. Over 75 plate appearances last year, 306, 413, 645. Put up a 180 WRC plus, hit 5 home runs, stole 3 bases in his cup of coffee. Solid young player for 4,300, 3,100. Josh Smith filling in for Josh Young in this version of the lineup. I don't love Josh Smith. He does have triple position eligibility on FanDuel for 2,200. He's out to a 313, 450, 428 start over 20 plate appearances, but we kind of know who Josh Smith is. Not a guy I'm going out of my way for. I do like Jared Walsh from the left side. A little bit of lefty pop. He's got a home run on the board, off to a decent start over 35 plate appearances. It's very cheap at $3,000 on FanDuel, $3,800 on DraftKings. You can definitely get to that one. In 2022, pretty good contact profile. And then partial season in 2023, if I remember. Yeah, 116 plate appearances in 23. Just 4 home runs, a medium contact profile. But we'll forgive him that. We'll look at the 22 marks. Andrew Kneisner, kind of interesting. We went to him a few times successfully when he was with the Cards. 40.9% hard hit rate and a 7.9% barrel rate in a small sample of 241 plate appearances last year. Came away with a 183 ISO, 10 home runs in the tiny sample as a backup catcher. That's not a terrible spot. I kind of think that's a little bit maybe sneaky here, not getting Jonah Heim in the lineup and dropping down to Kneisner for 2,200 on FanDuel where you don't need catchers, 31 on DraftKings where you do. It's playable. Leody Taveras, okay start to the season. We saw this from him last year. Over like the first half, he was doing well like this. Moderate amount of home runs, some good speed numbers, and then it kind of trailed off. But if he's back to doing good things at the bottom of the lineup, he's back to being a compelling wraparound play, if nothing else, to the top. So I don't mind Taveras for pretty cheap pricing. Astros 1 through 6, pretty high priority. Rangers 1 through 5, pretty high priority, and I like 7 and 8 in that lineup as well. And you can absolutely play Josh Smith as a lefty in this spot going up against the rookie, by the way. I don't want to totally take Josh Smith off the table. He's only 2,600 at third base on DraftKings, hitting from the left side, 2,200 triple position on FanDuel. Coors Field. Yep, thanks. Thanks, Dev. Dev pointed out probably before I noticed it in the chat. Devin pointed out that I had Jared Walsh twice when I put in the confirmed lineup. If that's up on the site, we'll get it fixed right after the show's over. Arcathelza's here. Arcathelza likes Henley. What is it about Henley? Is it just the price, the $4,000? Because I get it. Like I said, that's the same price as, say, Randall Grichuk at Coors Field today. Randall Grichuk projects a little higher than he does. I just don't love the idea of a double-A pitcher. I don't know what the leash is going to look like. Wasn't particularly good in double-A at an advanced age to talk about it again. But I do get it. It's a DFS play more than a baseball play. For $4,000, that buys you 2 bats in a stack. Just make sure that you're making the right upgrade. You're not pivoting into like the most common setup that people will be using with that pitcher if you do go to him. But not a lot of faith that it's going to succeed for more than a couple of points. Jay Gentile was on the fence with Turnbull on FanDuel. We'll play more Assad instead. You're going to play more Assad because I liked Spencer Turnbull? Is that what you're saying to me here, Jay? I see how it is. That's fine. We'll see who wins that one. Not a big Assad guy. What else is going on? Trey's here. Trey says my Braves pitching staff looking bleak early. Yeah, it's not great, but there's some good young arms in that system. They just got to get things together. Jay says not at all. Yeah, just teasing, Jay. I didn't even if you were serious about that, I wouldn't be offended by it. There have definitely been some misses on some pitchers, more at the top end over the last couple of days. I feel like our top pitcher has just fallen short, and they've always been the right guy, right? The top pitcher is pretty easy to get right on most of these slates in terms of where guys should be projected. But that they've been a little bit rough over the first week of the season on the top end. I feel like we've done better through the middle and at the value bin. Fanatic, what if the Houston pitcher throws 2 innings, then it's a bullpen game? Is that possible? That's certainly possible. He seems like he especially considering that he went, what did I say? Faced 22 hitters, went 5 innings in a AAA start. Let's see when that was. Make sure he's on full rest. He probably is. MILB.com. They have game logs typically up on minor league. But do they not have it today? Well, huh. Did they take away the game logs on MILB.com? That would suck. Oh, there it is. Just took a minute to pop up for some reason. Yeah, that start was 5 days ago. April 3rd. Walked 4, gave up 2 home runs in AAA, 3 earned, 4 hits. Struck out 6. It's just one of those sticky DraftKings spots. If you're inclined to do that, if you're inclined to take those very low faith, very low projection, $4,000 pitchers just because of what it buys you at the plate, I get it. You can win that way. You don't need him to put up a monster start by any stretch of the imagination. You only need a couple of clean innings, and they don't even have to be fully clean. So I get it. It's just, I really think you're dealing with a lot of low probability. You're dealing with the possibility that he just gets tattooed in the first or second inning and goes negative on you and comes out of the game. So, shaky. Speaking of shaky, Kyle Freeland at Coors Field. Do not play Kyle Freeland. 6,000 on FanDuel, 5,000 on DraftKings. I just don't see a reason. If anybody wants to shout out a reason that they'll consider Kyle Freeland in this spot, going up against what is apparently a very good Diamondbacks lineup, feel free, but not for me. No, thank you. Freeland last year in 155 and 2/3, a 5.03 ERA, a 5.13 xFIP, a 13.9% swinging strikeout rate, 7.8% swinging strike rate. His strikeout rate is lower than some guys' swinging strike rate. 4.28% home run rate is extremely targetable. So definitely thinking Arizona bats. Pretty sure they were second overall on the stack board. The home run marks are kind of middle of the road. Coors isn't just like automatic home run upside. It's a giant ballpark. They do have, a plus to home run power. But the Diamondbacks come in, they're kind of a middle of the road power hitting team. They're just a very good hitting team overall. Low strikeout rates across the board for a lot of the top guys. And everybody in that top end group is a good power hitter, just not like, they don't have like the Braves lineup where it's a bunch of guys hitting 30 plus and 40 home runs and beyond. But they've got a lot of guys like Christian Walker topped this team with 33 last year, but they had several guys in the 20s. So it's good, not great, killer, destroying the world home run marks, but everybody's got a pretty decent one. And then I just think they project very, very well. A lot of doubles and a lot of speed on the bases out of this squad. So definitely want to get to some Diamondbacks. I'm sure they're going to be very popular here. Ketel Marte, 5,500, 4,400 were priced up a bit for Coors Field and for a hot start. 333, 375, 619 to start the season. Not bad over 48 plate appearances. 3 home runs on the board already. Stolen base on the board, a 157 WRC plus. One guy off to a bad start so far. Corbin Carroll. It's got him priced down to 4,000 at Coors Field. Not a bad spot on FanDuel. 5,700 is probably more correct on DraftKings, but he would probably be over 6,000 if he was playing anything like last year to start the season. This is a 42 plate appearance sample. It is nowhere near time to hit the panic button on Corbin Carroll's start. 71 WRC plus though. He's got 2 steals, just a 200, 333, 229 triple slash. I'm taking the over across the board on these categories the rest of the way. Last year, 285, 362, 506. Creator runs 33% better than average. 25 homers, 54 stolen bases in a phenomenal rookie season. So Corbin Carroll is a big yes at Coors Field at any price. Luis Gurriel, pretty decent hitter, 5,300, 3,900. He's got to be expensive for the ballpark, but he's out to a very strong start to the season. 310, 383, 571. We looked at his power bounce back last year, 24 home runs last year after hitting just 5 the year before. We saw a dip in the triple slash. Year before he was 291, 343, 400, but no power. Kind of middled it between 22 and 21 what he had been for last year, and that's good quality. That's where we want him to be. If he can manage to hit for power and hit 290 this year and get on base at a fairly elite clip, so much the better. But I like Luis Gurriel a lot. Love Christian Walker. His historically low strikeout rates at 19.2% last year with all the 33 home runs. 34.8% to start the season this year, but you get tons of premium contact, and he is a very good hitter in addition to having the most power on the team. Junior Suarez, 31 home runs each of 21 and 22. Dipped to, I think, 23 home runs in 2023. but monster power at the plate. He's out to a 316, 372, 447 start. Get the good triple slash numbers from Eugenio while they last. I guarantee you the average dips, the on-base dips, but the power is going to go up a little bit. So Eugenio Suarez for 43, 36 playing at Coors Field. Plenty of upside for him against a very weak lefty. Gabriel Moreno for 4,200, 3,100. An excellent young catcher. Rough start to the season so far, just a 62 WRC plus, but over 380 plate appearances last year, a 103 WRC plus. Hit 7 home runs, slash 284, 339, 408. I like Gabriel Moreno quite a bit, and I think he's underpriced on this slate for playing at Coors Field. Randall Grichuk has made 7 plate appearances so far with this team after he was, I think, hurt to start the season, or he was at extended spring training camp or whatever after being hurt earlier, whatever the case may be. Back in the lineup now. A little bit of righty pop over the years from Grichuk. He's a good mid-range home run hitter. I'm not sure if we have a 20 home run season on the board. 16, 19. Yeah, we didn't get to 20. I think he was over 20 a couple times in his career. But a decent mid-priced, low lineup right-handed bat in Coors Field going up against a bad lefty. Blaze Alexander, Kevin Newman. Alexander's out to a decent start, a home run, a stolen base, a 116 WRC plus. Kevin Newman filling in, Perdomo, I think got hurt. 3 plate appearances so far, kind of an afterthought at the bottom of the lineup, but it is Coors Field. So to look at Newman in an extended sample, 309 plate appearances 2 years ago, 2 home runs, 8 steals, 94 WRC plus. Last year, 253, 3 homers, 8 steals, a 78 WRC plus. If you put those together, that's about a full season. You're talking about 5 home runs and 16 stolen bases. Not a great source of on base. A pretty low end, like Coors Field only kind of a wraparound play. He's also only available on DraftKings, 3,800 over there, third base and shortstop. Not on the FanDuel slate despite playing over the weekend. Rocky's side. Zach Allen's tricky here. At 9,800, I think he's pretty skippable on FanDuel. He could absolutely win the slate, right? So when I say he's skippable, know that I mean that I would skip him if I'm building out 150 lineups, because I typically do skip even good pitchers in Coors. And I think that's a high price for him at Coors. And I think something's up. I really do. It's a very small sample, so it's kind of unfair to say it. But the biggest indicator for me right now, Gallen over the first 2 starts, down a mile per hour and a half of velo on his fastball. That's a bad indicator out of the gate. It's especially bad when your strikeout to walk ratio goes from 26.9% with 6.6% and 26% with 5.6% across, 65 starts, 500, 400 and change innings, whatever it is, over the last 2 seasons. And then you dip to, again, super small sample. So he could completely right the ship and be fine the rest of the year. But to start the season over 11 innings, 20.9% and 11.6%. The walk rate, the strikeout to walk ratio, and the dip in velo, combined with an 11.2% swinging strike rate, dipping down to a 9.7, a little bit of loss of CSW along with that. I got my concerns about Gallen enough to, when he's starting in Coors Field at a full price, I can skip that. Again, could come out and absolutely dominate and win the slate. We saw Ryan Pepio put up the best start ever by a visiting pitcher at Coors Field just yesterday against this team. He struck out 11 guys. Pretty elite start from Pepio, and Zach Gallen, more established pitcher than Pepio. 8,200 on DraftKings is where I run into trouble with it, because even with those concerns, if Zach Gallen is at all like Zach Gallen, that's a pretty good price for Zach Gallen. So I think you probably do roll the dice a few times on DraftKings. I'm kind of glad I don't have to on FanDuel. You can do it on FanDuel, but I think the better spot for Gallen is certainly at that price on DraftKings. It's a nothing lineup opposing him. They get a little bump, of course, from Coors Field, so you got some decent projections from some of these guys. There's a couple hitters that I do like, as we've talked about through the early part of the season in this lineup. I think Tovar, despite not a great rookie season last year, did finish with 15 home runs, 11 stolen bases. There's enough to point to in his line last year that I have a little bit of reasonable expectation for Tovar to have a decent second season. He's only 3,900, 3,300 at shortstop. He's very cheap, easy to get to. Charlie Blackmon can still get on base, set the table for these guys. Ryan McMahon, anytime they're in Coors Field, gains upside. He's got a pair of home runs on the season in 42 plate appearances, hits from the left side, 4,500, 3,500. He's very, very affordable for it being Coors Field. These guys typically don't get as big a price bump at Coors because, well, the team sucks. as their opponents do. So they're always interesting. They're also never as popular as their opponents are. So I do always at least like considering the Rockies and what they can get me in Coors games. Elias Diaz, a little bit of upside, 296, 310, 407 to start the season. Last year in 526, he had 14 home runs, 267, 316, 409, just an 81 WRC plus. A playable catcher at worst. 4,300 is a playable price on DraftKings. Still love Chris Bryant, 4,700, 3,100. I think there's some upside lurking there still. One home run on the season that he got, I think, over the weekend. 107, 265, 214. Otherwise, kind of a rough start to another season for poor Chris Bryant. Just been lost for 2 years since signing with Colorado, but still got to love the upside, especially in Coors games. Nolan Jones, probably the best player on the team. Out to a rough start over 44. Still love the upside. I like that he's under 5,000 in a Coors game on DK, 3,300 on FanDuel. You also get weird mixed eligibility. First base and outfield for Bryant and outfield only for Jones on DraftKings, and the opposite on FanDuel. But either way, you get one of them at outfield, one of them at first base, and you diversify your stack. Brendan Rodgers dipping down the lineup to the 7 spot. He was originally in the projected version, was up here. Like him a little bit less down lineup, but he's cheap. He won't be popular. He hasn't done anything really to start the season. He made 192 okay plate appearances last year. Year before that, in 581, he had 13 home runs. 92 WRC plus isn't great, but I don't know. I haven't fully given up, I guess, on the skill set. And in Coors games, we gain ground. Not a great spot in the lineup. Just kind of a flyer at the bottom. Eloy Montero and Brenton Doyle, kind of the same thing. Doyle out to a decent start, 278, 316, 528. Creating runs at a 113 clip. 2 home runs on the board already. Was a little bit interesting for some counting stats. 10 homers, 22 steals from the bottom of the lineup, but otherwise pretty bad last year. And Montero has displayed, at least through the minors, some pretty high-end right-handed power. We'll see. It hasn't really translated in the show yet. 307 plate appearances, 11 homers last year, a 183 I. So that's not bad. That's fairly respectable, actually. It's not killer, but it's all right. So for me, it's neither pitcher. If you're on DK and you're a bit of a risk taker around very, very talented pitchers, potentially with funky things going on that are underpriced in a terrible spot, in a terrible ballpark, or in a good spot lineup-wise, but terrible ballpark, Zach Gallen's your guy. I expect that he'll be kind of low-owned, just with the cores of it all. Maybe not. I didn't check his ownership. Curious. I'm sure he'll be low-owned on FanDuel. I can't imagine we're seeing any popularity on him on FanDuel. We'll start there because that's what popped up first. It's in the single digits, but it's actually a little higher than I would expect. Wow. I don't agree with these ownership projections. RG, really? We're thinking Yu Darvish at 9,200 against the Cubbies is going to be the most popular pitcher by a pretty wide margin tonight? I don't see that. And if that is the case, I'll buy some Blake Snell shares. I'll buy some Zach Eflin shares. I'll buy some Luis Castillo shares. Wow. If RG's got this correct on their ownership projections, that's interesting. I like Darvish, but I was not expecting him to be the highest owned pitcher of the day at basically full prices. Let's see what's going on the DK ownership board. Wow. Am I missing something with Yu Darvish today? I know he's Yu Darvish. I like the pitcher a lot. I wrote about him in glowing terms. I just wasn't expecting him to be this popular. To answer the question that we're actually asking, that's strange. Hey, what's that Gallen's price tonight? RG's got him at a different price than I do on DraftKings. I'm just checking this real quick. 8,200. I got it right. That's all right. We're not going to refer to this because they don't even have the price correct. They got him listed at 77. I don't understand how that could have happened. I would be even more compelled to play Zach Gallen if he cost 7,700 on DraftKings. But as far as I know, that's not the case. I just double checked the slate itself actually from the DraftKings site, and he's 8,200. They had him with like mid-teens kind of ownership, and I think it's probably about right for where he'll land. So you're making your decision against that on Zach Gallen. The price is very good. If it happens to be 7,700 somehow, so much the better. But absolutely, we're firing away with Diamondbacks bats against Kyle Freeland. I think the Rockies maybe a little bit moderately playable, just given the Coors Field of it, given the question marks that I have about Gallen. Just not a great lineup. 3 games to go, 5:30. No basketball to worry about tonight. Why is the NBA off today, by the way? Was it for the eclipse? There you go, Fanatic. Fuck yeah. Because roto grinders suck. They're wrong most of the time. That's why people need rotoscouts. Yes. For sure. I actually used their Stochastic has Snell by a fairly wide margin. That sounds correct. Yeah. I didn't look at the rest of the prices. They might just be off on all their prices on however they set up over on RG. So that's probably impacting their ownership numbers pretty aggressively. But be aware of these things, as you look at people's numbers, like make sure you think through. And I know I do it constantly where I'm just like, let me grab this, paste it in here and go, because you're running out of time. But when given the time, like take a look, numbers, prices, projections, and make sure everything makes sense. Because I myself, as you saw with having a guy in there twice just before, it's very easy to screw up uploading, copy pasting, etc., etc. Oh, the NCAA championship, of course. Thank you, guys. Good call. That's how much college sports are on my radar. Forgot that the tournament ended tonight. I'll definitely watch that game, though. What else we got going on? India Scratch. Jonathan India Scratch for the Reds. If anybody's playing the early slate, thank you, Aggressive Goose, for that. Not sure if that started yet. Devin Scott calling for the Gritchick Welcome Back special. That's right. He was in Colorado, wasn't he? Fanatic just signed up over at Ace Mind. Awesome, buddy. Love it. Hope you use the promo code. If not, promo code RotoScouts, all caps, get you 20% off your first month. I'm sure those guys will let you reset it if you send them a friendly email if you forgot to use the promo code, but hopefully you did. acemind.io, guys. It's our sim partners. Great site to check out. A lot going on over there. All the different sports, optimizer, and sims. And the pricing is, I'm sure as Fanatic could probably tell you, the pricing is aggressively better than a lot of other places that may or may not have just been mentioned in chat. Appreciate you, Fanatic. Thank you, buddy. Let's talk Rays and Angels. I really like Zach Eflin in this spot going up against a pretty bad Angels team. We do have the Angels lineup. It's a little bit different. I'll just plug it in here real quick. So we do have Anthony, I don't like baseball, Rendon still at the top, but then we move Mickey Moniak up to the second spot in the lineup, where he did have a couple good games last year. Looks like Shanuel is out of the lineup completely. By the way, if you guys saw the... I don't even know what the play was, but apparently they took away a hit from Nolan Shanuel, which, according to the broadcasters anyway, was definitely a hit. But like 6 days later, they corrected the scoring and took away a hit from the kid from last week. And that ended his, he had like a 40-something game on base streak going to start his career, which is pretty incredible. And they just kind of took it away retroactively, which really sucks. The Angels broadcasters were going after him like crazy for it. But especially for a team with like nothing else going on. Kind of sucks. Anyway, Miguel Sano, Drury, Luis Renifo, Logan Hoppy, and Zach Neto to round things out. So that sucked. Not putting the Rays lineup in, but what they did to Nolan Shanuel. Doesn't look like we've got the Rays just yet. A couple other ones dropped. I think games we haven't gotten to yet. So to start us off, let's start with the Rays bats, looking at Tyler Anderson on the other side. I think that's a pretty reasonable stack to consider for tonight. A lot of the Rays hitters haven't fully gotten it going, at least not the way they got out of the gate last year.
But this could be a pretty solid spot going up against the lefty who had a 5.43 ERA last year, a 5.52 xFIP, struck out just 18.9, walked 10.2 last year, gave up a 3.18% home run rate with a little bit of barrel, but not all that bad in the exit velo and hard hit departments. Year before, he was a little bit better in terms of power, 2.57 ERA, a 4.11 xFIP though. Limited power, but only struck out 19.5, was better at limiting walks that year. I just think he's a really gettable pitcher here. So for a Rays team that I like kind of top to bottom most nights, we'll see what comes out in the final version of the lineup. This version, a little bit funky with Curtis Mead in there in the 6th spot, Ahmed Rosario in the 5. I don't dislike those players. There's definitely upside from those guys, but we'll see what the final version looks like. But either way, I think you're attacking Tyler Anderson with some Rays shares. Hopefully they sneak through as not the highest owned stack of the day. It's not a great overall ballpark for offense, but I do think it's kind of interesting to consider some Rays. And for the not slow start, but not incredibly hot start, you get Yandy Diaz priced down slightly on DK at 4,900, still full price at 3,700 on FanDuel. 250, 311, 375 to start for Diaz, just a 105 WRC plus. He was way better in terms of on base and everything for the full season last year, and just was on fire to start last year. So just a more conservative start, but I love him to round into form. Harold Ramirez, I really like as a 2-hitter. A lot of line drive skill, a lot of hard hit ability. 3,600, 2,600. Definitely an interesting option to pair with Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, Isaac Paredes. All those guys have power. All those guys have upside. Arozarena, 2 home runs, 2 steals to start the year. Just a 95 WRC plus, but needs to get things going. But total multi-category contributor. Isaac Paredes, I think, led this team in home runs last year, I want to say. Yeah, 31 homers last year. 3 on the board already to start the year. 257 ISO, pretty solid start to his campaign. Ahmed Rosario, I think, is very interesting as an acquisition by this team. Just one of those players that they pick up and turn into what they were supposed to be. So I think he's one to watch this season just for the raw ability, getting into a better situation. 259, 286, 370 to start the year, 95 WRC plus. Nothing to speak of over his first 28 plate appearances, but multi-position eligible shortstop and outfield on DK for only 3,400. He's a guy who was once a premium prospect. Had a pretty good year 2 years ago in Cleveland. 11 homers, 18 steals, 283, 312, 403, 103 WRC plus. It's not great for power upside, but maybe he's just more of a hit tool guy, get on base, steal some bases, score some runs, provide correlated scoring than the power hitter that he was once thought to be, or like the mid-range 20s home run power hitter. But I like the spot for Ahmed Rosario to maybe get his career really going. 2,500, 3,400 is at least cheap and plays a premium position at shortstop. You can build him in. Curtis Mead, 3,000, 2,100. Decent start over 18 plate appearances. Do we have any sample from him? 92 plate appearances last year. Hit a homer. 253, 326, 349. Easily playable part for cheap prices. Jose Caballero has 4 stolen bases already this season. Jose Siri has 6 stolen bases already this season. They've been running out of the gate. They've been getting on at decent clips. Siri in particular is kind of interesting from late in the lineup for 3,700, 3,100. He's priced down there. He had 25 home runs, stole 12 bases last year. He's already halfway to that stolen base total. And then Rene Pinto. In how many plate appearances was this? 105 plate appearances last year. Pinto, 15.9% barrels, 40.6% hard hits. It's a tiny, tiny sample, but he hit 6 home runs. There's a little bit of reasonable expectation for a good catcher bat there. And then burying the lead, I love the spot for Zach Eflin here. 8,800, particularly on FanDuel where he's so cheap. Really like that. He projects competitively with everybody not named Blake Snell. For the discount, that's essentially the same projection. So really like Eflin. Going up against an Angels team that I just don't think much of outside of this guy. Free Mike Trout. 5,400 on DraftKings, 3,700 on FanDuel. Trout is still a star. 4 home runs on the board already this year. He's been crushing the ball early. 2 stolen bases, a 375 ISO, 179 WRC plus. Just kind of lacks help above him. Anthony Rendon, negative 25 WRC plus. That means they'd be better off just giving them an out in that spot. 25%, 125% worse than league average for run creation so far for Rendon. Scored a run. I think he's got 1, maybe 2 hits on the season. I forget what he did over the weekend. Moniak may be a little bit interesting. moving up the lineup as a lefty bat with a little bit of former prospect pedigree, let's say. Came up, made 323 plate appearances last year, hit 14 home runs, stole 6, 215 ISO, 114 WRC+, 280, 307, 495. That was a moderately successful half a season campaign for Mickey Moniak. So climbing the lineup, he's not a bad option. If you want to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down through these guys is kind of where I'd look. I would just kind of skip Rendon here. I really don't think he's worth all that much consideration. Just doesn't care. Doesn't want to play well. Taylor Ward does have right-handed power, but Zach Eflin, outside of the 6% home run rate this year, 2.7% last year in his breakout season, just 2.56 the year before, does a reasonable job of limiting premium contact, limiting exit velocity, limiting launch angle to some degree, 9.1 degrees specifically last year, 10.5 degrees the year before, just 6.1% barrels that year. So Eflin is pretty effective at limiting home runs. He doesn't walk very many at all, just 3.4% last year, 4.8% the year before. Took a big step forward for strikeout rate last year, 26.5% versus 20.8% the year before. 2 not great starts out of him to start the season, but love the bounce back spot for Zach Eflin, and I love the price. Really on both sites, I can get behind this 9,000 on DraftKings, but 8,800 is definitely cheap for him on FanDuel. Miguel Sano does have the idea of power from several years ago. In the heart of the lineup here, he's a $3,000 first baseman on DraftKings. He's a $2,300 third baseman on FanDuel. Still pulling a 7.6 in the home run model. Hasn't hit any in his 23 plate appearances. Has struck out 34.8% of the time. That was always who Sano was. Great premium contact when he does make contact. Fairly high strikeout rates. A little bit of power, or a lot of power. I'm more on the Zach Eflin gets him 2 or 3 times side of this discussion, though. Brendan Drury, very realistic middle infield power for a fair price from Drury from the right side. Luis Rengifo had a pretty decent year last year. He's only made 15 plate appearances this year. I didn't look at him for wasn't in the projected lineup. But 16 home runs, 6 stolen bases over 445 last year with a pretty effective triple slash, decent on base percentage, and was one of the guys on the Angels above average for run creation last year. 17 home runs, kind of sneaky for power the year before that, and 511 plate appearances. He's not a bad late lineup option, especially considering he gives you dual position eligibility on DraftKings for 36. Triple position eligibility for only 23 makes him particularly interesting on FanDuel. Maybe we just keep him in our pocket, though, because I really want to take the Eflin side of this one. And I don't think there's a lot of sequencing here. I don't think there's a lot of ability to continue a rally and turn the lineup over and get it back to the top hitters up here. You get O'Hoppe, who does have good power as a catcher late in the lineup. He's off to a strong start at 407, 484, 630 with a 226 WRC+. Don't love Neto at the bottom of the lineup. So there's a couple parts that are playable, but they're just, I think the sum is less than the value of each of the parts, and the opposite of the famous cliche. So Zach Eflin for sure, really like him, one of my top options on the day. Tyler Anderson is a big no. Rays bats are a fairly big yes. Like, consider them one of the higher end teams from the middle. And then Angels bats for me are kind of a no. If you take anybody, you obviously take Mike Trout. If I'm taking a 3-man, it's probably 1, 2, and then one of these 2 guys. If I'm taking a 5-man, it's probably straight through those 5. But I could sacrifice probably Sano to take Rengifo. Put Drury at first, take Rengifo at second. They're not expensive. That's the only thing you get out of them. And they're going to win some ball games this year. They're going to score some runs. But yeah, if Eflin's anything like the Eflin he was last year, I'm definitely on that side. Fanatic, yes, you're absolutely able to use my projections. You just got to copy them off the website. And right now, it's just copy paste off the website. At some point, I will try and get the ability to download a CSV in there. But yeah, you copy those off. You need to inject a standard deviation number, or use they have a default setting where you can set a percentage setting for the standard deviation, and then you're going to need to feed it ownership from somewhere, but you should be able to feed all of that into AceMind and run with it. And at a certain point, I know I've talked to those guys. We would love to get it set up where we're feeding projections over to those guys and it's just in there. No idea if they want to actually make that happen. That's a business decision for them, certainly. And there's a lot of logistical difficulty behind it. So we'll see if that ever happens. But yeah, for now, you should be able to worst copy, paste, and upload. And for uploading, it's just when you get to that upload your projections part of the page, you can just drag and drop a CSV file into that spot. And you can also just, they have pre-made mapping for projections from other sites. So maybe at some point they'll do that for us. So yeah, we went through this one, Eflin and the Rays primarily. So depending on who you believe, Yu Darvish may or may not be pretty popular here. I do think he's a very talented pitcher. I just think a lot of the Cubbies. We're dealing with a talented pitcher with a good projection in a pitcher's park. He's also fairly cheap at 8,400 on DraftKings, so I don't want to sell Yu Darvish short here. Could easily succeed. Made 3 starts already. This is his 4th start of the year. He pitched in the Korea series. 25% strikeout rate, a 2.30 ERA, 3.46 xFIP, 109 WHIP, 12% swinging strikes. Looks a lot like Yu Darvish to me. You know, you get the wrong start. He's got a lot of wasted pitches in the dirt because he's a junk ball thrower and he's, up there trying to make things work and figure out which pitches are working the best that night. But there's a lot of very high-end ability for Yu Darvish over the years. He could absolutely get this Cubs team. There are some targetable strikeout rates in this lineup, but there's also some guys who are very good at avoiding strikeouts. So it's kind of a mixed bag there, and I just like what the Cubbies have this year. A lot of run creation ability, a lot of on-base skill, decent amount of power, decent amount of speed. So I don't think it's the greatest spot in the world for Darvish, but at 84, I could justify it on DraftKings. 92, he's definitely in the mix on FanDuel. Right? Lands 4th. It's just, I like my Eflin shares better. I like my Castillo shares better. If I'm paying a higher price, I like Blake Snell. I like my Turnbull shares for cheaper. Paxton shares for cheaper. I'm just typically, I think I've said this on shows before, I'm typically more inclined to shop in this kind of a range, FanDuel-wise. If I can get a guy that projects very comparably for 88 versus 92, I'll take it. Same thing, 88 versus 95. If I can get a guy who projects a few points off, but is 7,700 compared to the 27.8 to 29.6, there's not a lot of daylight between those two numbers, and there is between those two prices. Somebody had asked, what I do with value stacking and taking bottom of the lineup guys. And I'll always take guys out of the bottom of a lineup anyway. And I talk a lot about how they help average down pricing of better hitters in lineups. But I'm typically going to try and get my value on the mound most of the time. That's always been my approach, particularly on FanDuel. But on DK, you get the ability to, go high end, low end, take a value pitcher along with your high end guy. Makes it interesting over there. But I'm always shopping around for value starters. So 92 for Yu Darvish when he's just competitive with a lot of other guys I like on the board. I think shares of him just kind of fall by the wayside for me, but could easily succeed. Again, could be the top starter on the day, and do not dislike him. Like him quite a bit at the 84 on DraftKings. If you're going to the Cubbies side, which I think you can do against Darvish here, you can see some pretty strong projections up at the top for the top 4 hitters there. Decent mid-range home run marks for all those guys. They're all good at getting on base, and they've been doing so to start the season. Top 5 hitters have an average on base percentage of 383 to start the year, an average WRC plus of 138, with only Cody being below average at 98 WRC plus. It'd be bad for this team if Cody Bellinger dipped back to the bad version of Cody Bellinger. Best thing he did last year, which I talked about, was cut the strikeout rate from, I think it was high 20s in 2022 down to 15.6%. Really fed the surge that he went on last year. And he's been all right at that. It's not like he's striking out at a 35% clip to go with the slow start. And we're talking about 41 plate appearances. So total faith still in Cody Bellinger. Chris Morel with triple position eligibility for 34 is interesting. Ian Happ, I think, probably a little underpriced at 3,300, 4,600. Seiya Suzuki, maybe a little bit, couple $100 cheap on DraftKings, probably about right on FanDuel. 2 home runs and hitting everything hard to start the year. 12 ribbies, 133 WRC plus to start the season for him. Dansby, out to a great start. 2 homers and a steal. 167 WRC plus leads the team so far. 310, 432, 552. I think you guys know by now that I love me some Dansby Swanson, and he is cheap on DraftKings. 4,300. That's cheap. $3,500 on FanDuel, all right, but $4,300 on DraftKings. Target. Michael Busch, a little bit of lefty pop for a cheap price at first base if he's in the lineup. Nico, a little bit of speed for a fair price. Mike Tauchman, a little bit of on base for a fair price from the bottom of the lineup. Jean Gomes, a little bit of premium contact from a catcher with a little bit of power upside, but nobody at the bottom of the lineup from like 6 down is overly prioritized, especially not in this park going up against you, Darvish. Javier Assad was mentioned earlier as a potential value play. I don't love it. 7,600. I think the price is maybe a couple $100 high for what he's projecting for going up against a admittedly still top heavy Padres lineup, but one that I think is improving on the bottom end. You note that the only guy I didn't highlight there was Jurickson Profar. I might be selling Assad a little bit short in the projections. Had a good start so far, 6 innings, 22-7. What was that actually total to? We talked about him a little bit in his first outing because I think he was, if I'm remembering correctly, he was even cheaper. In that first start, which was against the Rockies in Wrigley, faced 22 hitters, allowed 4 hits, walked 1, struck out 5, no runs to speak of. So worked to a 0 ERA, but a 3.94 xFIP for that game. Probably a little bit more telling. But he was very good in that first start. Last year in 10 starts and 109 and a third, worked a lot out of the pen and long relief last year. 3.05 ERA, 4.35 xFIP, 2.90% home run rate, but that came with a little bit of hard hit, a little bit of barrel. I think, stretched out to full starting, these probably go up. Year before, 37 and 2/3, 8 starts. It's probably all starts. 18.1% strikeout rate. This is a very small sample. 12% walk. Contact was all right. Let me see what were his start relief splits last year. As a starter last year, 19% strikeouts, 8.1% walks versus 22.8 and 10.1% as a reliever. 4.48 xFIP versus a 4.22 as a reliever. Gave up 9 home runs to 221 hitters as a starter. Just 4 home runs to 228 hitters as a reliever. So yeah, I think my hypothesis holds up pretty well there. I expect that we'll see a little bit more power against if he starts all year. You can probably get away with it. You got to catch him right, obviously, but you can probably get away with it. He's cheap, but I just think there's better spots, right? Do we really want to pay 74 for Javier Assad against the Padres when Jose Barrios is on the board against Seattle with all those strikeouts for 71? I don't really think so. Same question versus Spencer Turnbull at 69 in admittedly a worse matchup. 84 even for Darvish's, 1,000 more for Javier Assad to go up to you, Darvish, on the other side of this game. I wouldn't put Bailey Ober in that conversation. If you wanted to go total bargain bin, Miles Mikolas at 53 or the rookie against Texas at just 4,000. I just think there's better value fits than Javier Assad on this slate. And at 76, it's very much the same conversation on FanDuel versus 77 for Turnbull, 88 for Eflin. I'd rather go up to. That's obviously a different price tier. Not as much downboard ability on FanDuel. Cut line for FanDuel is like here. I think the cut line for DraftKings, I would probably include Mikolas, but you're skipping Ober. I would skip Zach Gallen, but we talked about that already. Assad, I think, ducks into the pool. If I'm cutting it here, Assad does get in there, but just barely. And I think it's an awkward price fit if we're just talking about the value starters on DraftKings. And there's talent on the Padres side. Let's not deny that either. Xander Bogaerts, after a hot start, has dipped back down 255, 314, 277, just a .021 ISO, has a stolen base, but only a 75 WRC plus over 51. We saw him bounce back and forth all year last year, but finished 285, 350, 440, 20% better than average for run creation. Bogaerts is fine. He's cheap, 3,100, 4,700 across sites. Second base on DraftKings FanDuel for some reason, still playing him at shortstop. But I like the upside for Xander Bogaerts any given slate to have a throwback Xander Bogaerts night. Fernando Tatis probably a little bit cheap at 5,500 on DraftKings. 39 is correct on FanDuel. 3 home runs, 2 steals to start the year, a 140 WRC plus over 49 plate appearances. Not bad for him. Cronenworth, I got to say, at over 51 plate appearances anyway, looking like a 3-hitter. 304, 353, 435, creating runs 21% better than average. No power, no speed to speak of so far, but the triple slash is intact. That's where you want it. In the long term, I still think he's miscast as a 3-hitter, but they need that lefty bat to drop into that spot for them. They really, until these guys maybe round into form as full-time major leaguers, you're not putting Jerks and Profar in that third spot. You don't want to open with 5 righties in a row. So Cronenworth has the spot kind of by default. We'll see if we can hold it down, but 2,800, 3,800, at the very least, he steps in and helps with these prices. So if you're just stacking the top 5 over here is a $4,600 average, and that includes Tatis, it includes Machado, it includes Bogaerts. If you use the top 4 on FanDuel, 3,300, not bad. Machado under 5,000 on DraftKings, third base and shortstop eligibility. I really don't care that he's at 196, 288, 370. I know who Manny Machado is. 2 home runs on the board. I care about even a whole lot more. So we'll definitely go there. He's also only struck out in 17.3% of his 52 plate appearances so far. A lot of low strikeout rates to start this squad. I probably should have included Camposano at 5.4 there. To start the year, and again, we're talking about mostly 50 or fewer plate appearances. The top 7 hitters in this lineup are at just a 13.8% strikeout rate. And we're talking about throwing Javier Assad at them. I don't know. Last year, that same group of hitters in a much larger sample, 17.8% strikeout rate. Doesn't look like a Javier Assad spot to me. I might even unwind any thought of playability at 7,400, 7,600. Just not the right price. Profar I don't like. Camposano I do like quite a bit. 3,500 is a good catcher price. 2,900 on FanDuel. 351, 514 to start the year. Creating runs 41% better than average. Has a homer on the board. Hot start to the season for a pretty decent young catcher. I like that spot. And I think Graham Pauley and Jackson Merrill, 2 lefties at the bottom of the lineup, like I said, stretching this lineup out a little bit. Maybe once they fully come around, no longer totally top heavy. And Merrill's had a good start, 324, 395, 471, creating runs 40% better than average. Homer, a steal on the board. Paulie a little bit less, but he had a game-winning homer. You get that anyway. So, Yu Darvish, yes, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel just kind of an is who he is spot for Darvish. Don't love the matchup against the Cubbies. I would take some Cubs as a hedge against that if I'm rostering a bunch of Darvish. I think you can take some Padres, particularly on the top end, but we just saw they stretch out a little bit now. And I'm really not going to go to Assad. I don't want him on the board, I don't think. Thin path to success against this team for those prices. If he was like 65, that would be a different conversation. 76 on FanDuel, I don't see it. Last game up. See what you guys are talking about. Larry C., it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. It's the clock. It's the pitchers doing drive line to get max velo. It's not a coincidence the pitchers are throwing harder and having more TJ surgeries as well. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff going around. I was reading one thing from James Andrews, the notable guy who was the go-to Tommy John guy for decades. He was talking about how over his career, a long sample, they've done, obviously data collection on these things and tons of studies. And throughout his career, it was always, you see a fair number of Tommy Johns at in the majors. You see some in the minors, fewer for college players. And he said, I used to do like 8 or 9 a year on high school players. And he said, now with the focus on spin and velo, and it's primarily, to me, I think it's spin more than velo, honestly. Just because of the torque on the arm. But he said with that whole structure has completely flipped. The pyramid's upside down now, where by far, according to James Andrews, the most surgeries go at the high school level now. So these kids are just blowing out their arms. So it's also cutting down, kids who might one day develop into something. But yeah, there's the spin, the velo, and then there's also another clip going around of Tyler Glasnow talking from, I think it was from a couple years ago. And he's talking about when they cut down on the sticky stuff, how much harder you have to actually grip the baseball now. And if you just like do this with your hand, right, you can feel down here the muscles just from taking a grip tense up, where there were for years and years for pitchers the phrase hold the ball like an egg, hold the baseball like an egg. You want a light touch on the ball, fingertips, and that generates spin from that. So the cutting down on sticky stuff is maybe also part of the equation, but just some really, really interesting stuff going around about that now. And yeah, obviously it's had a devastating effect on these guys. I think the clock is honestly the least of it, to be fully frank. It's in there, I'm sure. You change the workload, you change the effort and the stress and everything. Absolutely, it's in there. But I feel like that's maybe the least of it. A lot of those other things to me really make a lot of sense. There's another one analyzing Strider, looking at the cocking of the arm, so to speak. And Strider has I came that close to saying Strider has a flat cock. Strider has a flat mechanism, right? Where his arm's coming back, not on this kind of an angle, but coming back flat. I can't do it the right way. But it's just the way that it creates torque is just completely upside down from how it should be throwing pitches. So there's a lot in there. And then another thing that Andrews said in his studies and 40 years of data collection on this, he was saying that high school pitchers, the max stress should be around 80 miles an hour. So you shouldn't have kids throwing 90. And he also said the thing that really I thought was interesting, especially if you're like a dynasty league guy, he said that the Tommy John ligament doesn't mature until age 26. Right? So if you're thinking dynasty wise, like maybe you take a couple guys who have shown some success, maybe at a slightly lower level, but they're 25, 26, 27, 28, rather than the hotshot 21-year-old who's throwing 140 miles an hour. Just really, really very interesting. Trey, the initial looks at Strider showed UCL damage. I think he was going for a second opinion and everything, but it seems pretty locked in that Strider's UCL is damaged. He's on the injured list right now. I don't think they put him on the 60. I think he's on the 10, but seems pretty destined for Tommy John, unfortunately. So let's round things out. Trevor Williams. I mentioned the Giants before. It's kind of the maybe sneaky end of the night stack. I kind of like it. I don't know what their popularity looks like, but there's some bats on this team that I like. There's enough ability. There's enough power. And they're going up against Trevor Williams, who looks like he was okay in his first start of the year. Managed to get by without allowing a home run despite 57.1% hard hits and 92.6 miles an hour of exit velo on average in that one. Came away with a 3.38 ERA and a 3.77 xFIP over 5 1/3, so give up a couple runs. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but what I wanted to focus on for him, 144 1/3 last year over 30 starts. Struck out just 16.8% of opposing hitters. Allowed a 5.55 ERA, a 5.22 xFIP, had a 1.60 whip, just a 7.9% swinging strike rate, only a 22.3% CSW. That's awful. 10.2% barrels. Hard hits and exit velo were okay. That's manageable, but a 5.16% home run rate, even with the home run wonkiness, that's one and change above where we would consider an extremely high home run rate. So very, very targetable pitcher here. It's a hit and miss Giant squad for sure, but I kind of like the idea of going to them, back up some Blake Snell shares with them. Really like Blake Snell here, going up against a kind of a nothing Nationals team. They are, again, I started the show this way and I'll end it this way. The Nationals are better against lefties, but that only makes them about average. If you look at the numbers, like it got them from below average to about average. So they're still not that good. CJ Abrams is lost against same-handed pitching off the top of the lineup. Lane Thomas from the right side, very, very good against lefties. He's also only 2,800 on FanDuel, 4,500 on DraftKings. That's a good spot, but again, not all lefties are created equal. Blake Snell is among the highest end lefties you could possibly get. Jesse Winker, if he's in the lineup lefty-lefty, That's kind of a easy spot for Blake Snell, let's say. I think a lot of Winker is a hitter if he manages to pull himself together this year. He's shown some minor signs early in the season. A 467 on base is good. He's hit the ball a little bit. He's created runs 38% better than average. He hasn't struck out. He has drawn some walks, but lefty, I do not like that spot. Joey Meneses, decent bat, but not a lot of power. Hasn't shown much of anything so far to start this season. Joey Gallo, we know that we love Joey Gallo on this show. We've seen a little bit of the thunder so far. 2 home runs on the board. We've seen plenty of the strikeouts, 32.4%, but that's notably better than his 42.8% so far. 17.6% walk rate. He is very much just Joey Gallo. Everything is perfectly in line. He might be the most statistically perfect person over 34 plate appearances that is just in line with everything that he's supposed to be doing. It's pretty funny, actually. So I don't expect you to get both Winker and Gallo, but either way, I don't want him. I don't want either of those guys lefty against Blake Snell. If you get Riley Adams in the lineup, that's another guy to maybe consider for his ability against left-handed pitchers, but it's Blake Snell. Keibert Ruiz puts a lot of balls in play, hits from both sides of the plate, cheap catcher, but it's Blake Snell. Ilmaro Vargas, Trey Lipscomb at the bottom of the lineup, Jacob Young. Very, very skippable Nats team for me today. Even those guys that are good righties against lefties, like, I'll say it one more time. It's Blake Snell. Snell last year, 31.5% strikeout rate over 180 innings, 32 starts, 2.25 ERA with a 3.62 xFIP, 15.3% swinging strike rate going up against these hitters. Yes, please. Year before, 24 starts, 128 innings, very similar numbers, 14.7% swinging, 32% strikeout rate. The only thing that maybe concerns you with Snell is it's the debut start. Maybe we're dealing with 5 innings instead of 6. Maybe there's a cap on the ability to get to the quality start bonus. But given that we like the Giants to get the win here, I like Snell to chase the bonus on DraftKings for sure. The second bonus we'll see on FanDuel, but I think he racks up enough strikeouts and puts up a very competitive number. I do like a lot of the options on the board, though, and he's very high priced, but we're several points out ahead of the field on the Blake Snell projection today for the money. So top starter on the board. Going to plan on rostering quite a bit of them. Really like the spot. The Giants lineup, if we're going there, I do think it's worth talking through the hitters real quick. Jung-Hoo Lee off to kind of a rough start. We've seen that with some of the KBO stars when they've come over. It's taken a little bit of time to adapt. What I like about Lee, he's supposed to be a contact-oriented hitter, get on base, generate base hits, score some runs, correlated scoring, and hasn't really done that yet. 205, 267 on the front end of the triple slash. Does have a home run on the board, but just creating runs 43% below average. But he's only struck out in 8.9% of the 45 plate appearances, so that's a good start. It gives us something to cling to, putting bat on ball fairly well. If he's just putting the ball in play against Trevor Williams, who doesn't have a ton of strikeout stuff, allows a lot of premium contact, I like that for 2,700, 4,100 as a good way to start a Giant stack. I like Lamont Wade a lot. We talked about Lamont Wade throughout last year. Finished the season with 17 homers, dipped to a 373 on base, but he was at like 410, 415 for a big chunk of the season last year. Still ended up creating runs, 22% better than average over 519 plate appearances. Very good lefty bat off the top of the lineup. Over 31 plate appearances this year, 308, 419 on the front end of the triple slash, right back to doing what he was doing last year. So for the only 3,300 first base outfield on DraftKings, it's a discount. 2,600 on FanDuel at first base only. I like that spot. Jorge Soler hit 36 home runs last year for the Marlins. He's got 2 on the board so far this year. Love the opportunity for Jorge Soler to get one against all that premium contact and power that Trevor Williams gives up. So we're taking Jorge Soler in, I don't know, every Giant stack, 9 out of 10 Giant stacks, something around there. He's only 2,800 on FanDuel, 10.38 in the home run model. He's only 4,300 on DraftKings. Love it. Mikey Conforto, kind of out to a good start. I like to see it. I like Michael Conforto. I thought he was a very good hitter and then missed a year. Came back, was kind of decidedly mediocre last year. 470 plate appearances for this Giant squad. 239, 334, 384. Created runs exactly at league average. Just 15 homers, 4 steals. So far this season, got 3 homers, so we're a fifth of the way to the home run total from last year already. He's creating runs 102% better than average over 41 plate appearances. I believe that's pretty good. 351 ISO is killer. 351, 415, 703 triple slash over 41 plate appearances. Pretty great start to the season for Conforto. So I hope he keeps it up. He's not priced up on DraftKings yet at all. 4,000. It's about right for like what he was coming into the year. There hasn't been that much movement there. He's 3,600 on FanDuel, by far the most expensive Giants hitter, the only guy above 3,000 on the FanDuel slate. Kind of wacky, but everybody else is cheap, so it helps you afford him. So no issues with it. Really like Mikey Conforto. Hope he keeps it up. Matt Chapman, 2 home runs on the board, just a 195, 250, 390 triple slash so far. But it's very, very early. Matt Chapman, a lot of right-handed thunder, tremendous premium contact profile. Ended up with, what was it, 17? 17 homers last year in 581 plate appearances. And as I've said numerous times already, got out to a great start last year and then kind of trailed off, but the premium contact stayed there. It's just the home run total didn't get to where we thought it would. Thairo Estrada, 3,600, 2,800 across sites, multi-position on FanDuel. Good mid-range power and stolen base upside. He's been bad to start the year. 90% worse than average creating runs, getting on at a 150 clip, 154 average. He's got a home run on the board in his 40 plate appearances, but last year Estrada, 14 homers, 23 steals, above average for run creation. Very good player who's never overly high priced, not all that popular. Yaz from the left side, a little bit of pop, 9.8% barrels, 44% hard hits last year, better than that the year before. Resulted in 15 home runs in 381 plate appearances. Good lefty bat going up against Trevor Williams. Probably will be a little bit sneaky if he's hitting down here, and he's very cheap across sites. Pat Bailey, Nick Ahmed, kind of afterthoughts in that lineup, but if you're building a bunch of Giant stacks, they can absolutely get in the mix. Bailey's off to a good start, 318, 375, 455, 34% better than average creating runs. Home run on the board this year in 25 plate appearances. He was mediocre last year. 7 home runs, and I feel like they all came in one big bunch, and they were like really valuable that week or those 2 weeks, and then he didn't do much else. But if you catch him in the midst of one of those stretches, then totally fine. And that's about it. Let's take a quick look back at the pitching board. Conforto's not starting? Damn. I forgot to check the lineup before we did that. What do they have in, since it is a team that I'm talking about wanting to get to, let's say. Oh, Wilmer. Wilmer's in there. All right. So, Jungle Lee, Wilmer Flores, Lamont Wade, Jorge Soler, Matt Chapman, Yaz, Thairo Estrada, Bailey, and Ahmed. So it is just the 1-for-1 Conforto out, Wilmer Flores in. That kind of sucks because I do like getting that lefty bat in there. But Wilmer is a good player. I just typically take my Wilmer shares when he's facing a lefty. Just to be clunky about it, So Wilmer only 2,700, 3,500. First base and third base eligible on DraftKings. First base only on FanDuel. Out to a good start this year. 316, 409, 368. Creating runs 28% better than average. No power so far, but hit 23 home runs last year in 454 and 19 in 602 the year before. Decent bat, perfectly serviceable replacement for Conforto in that lineup. All right, so to round things out, now that it's 6:13, we love Blake Snell off the top. He's very high priced on both sites, but deserving. Minor worries about his ability to book the quality start on FanDuel, just if they short start him in the first outing of the year. Luis Castillo, like the spot quite a bit. More is who he is, though. The prices are correct for Luis Castillo. There's tons of upside. Toronto team, not all that great and extremely top heavy with some strikeouts in it. Like him. 8,800 for Zach Eflin is very cheap on FanDuel. Like that quite a bit against the Nothing Angel squad. At 9,000, I think he's very playable on the DraftKings slate. One of the top priority pitchers overall. Yu Darvish, 8,400. Definitely a good price for him on DraftKings. 92, not so much, but he is in the mix for a few shares. But we talked about it. We like the Cubbies lineup also. So not the greatest Darvish spot in the world. Charlie Morton, very good pitcher. Projects out great. Just kind of an awkward price fit at 10,000. Jose Barrios, tons of strikeout upside for him at 96 going up against Seattle. Where he's very valuable is the $7,100 misprice on DraftKings. That's a blatant misprice. He's maybe not as good as being 96 on FanDuel. That might be a little bit high. I would feel like 92 would probably be about the right price for him in this spot. But 71 on DraftKings is cheap. That's SP2 territory. Spencer Turnbull. I'm interested to see what he does in this start. I'm going to have him. I think the sweeper that he displayed the other day is a for real pitch. We'll see if he can command it as well as he did. But I think there's maybe a little something there, and has been historically good at limiting home run upside, if nothing else. So maybe we take the bats out of some of the power hitters' hands, finds a few strikeouts along the way. Very effectively priced at $77.69. I'll definitely have some. James Paxton, 8,600 effective value pricing against a fairly high strikeout Minnesota team. Gallen pitching at Coors Field, 82 on DraftKings is okay. You can roll the dice there. 98 on FanDuel, I just wouldn't. And I have questions about what's going on with Zach Gallen, given his bumpy 2 starts over the first 2 starts. That was clunky. Speaking of bumpy. Assad, I don't like all that much against San Diego here. Not a ton of strikeouts there for him. Not a guy who really goes out and books strikeouts that aggressively on his own. I think he's pretty gettable. So I don't love that spot. And I don't think I would roster anybody from further down outside of Michaelis. If you totally desperately need bargain bin pitching on DraftKings, you get Michaelis at 53, and you get the rookie going up against Texas at 4,000 with no idea how deep he's going to pitch into this game, and a lot of very bad minor league numbers. Again, pitching in an advanced age in AA, he was bad last year. So I don't like this spot, but I get it for 4,000 on DraftKings. I don't like this spot, but I get it for 5,300 on DraftKings. And I probably have more faith in this. Even with Miles Michaelis doesn't strike out anybody, you might get 6 clean innings and a win out of Miles Michaelis, where I really don't think we get that out of Blair Henley here. Home run board. Give me a lot of Braves, some Astros, some Dodgers up at the top here. Astros, Braves, Dodgers, Braves, Astros, Braves, Dodgers. And there's a Philly, Kyle Schwarber. There's a twin, Byron Buxton. Back to the Astros, the Braves, the Braves. Pete Alonso. And then a little bit of mixture. But pretty aggressively, the power at least, is on the side of the Atlanta Braves, the Houston Astros, and the Los Angeles Dodgers today. No real shock to anybody who's ever paid attention to baseball over the last couple of years. Those are 3 elite teams. Anyway, that's where we're at for this slate, guys, up and down. 2 hours, 15 minutes in. We still got 50 people here watching. You guys rock. Hit that like button for me. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle if you get a chance. Check out our guys over at acemind.io if you're looking for an optimizer and sims for a really good price. Promo code rotoscouts, promo scout roto codes. Either way, I should have those guys put it in for when I screw it up. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month on top of their free 3-day trial. Check those guys out. Update for projections for all the confirmed lineups going up on the site momentarily. No basketball tonight. Enjoy the final game of the Final Four. Enjoy the baseball slate. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for more. See you.